So let's look at what Angular is. Angular is an open source framework which was designed to build modern, high performance web application. It was developed by Google and it was built on TypeScript. Let's get to see the history of Angular. Angular was first developed by Google in 2009, and in 2010, it was first released for public use. In 2014, a more modern version of the framework was designed, and this was released in 2015. So from 2015 till 2026, they've been released of different version and update of different versions, and we are currently at version 21 in 2026. So let's get to see the uses of Angular. Now, before we talk about that, we want to know what framework is, because in the last lecture, we said an Angular is a framework. So what exactly is a framework? So consider a framework as a tool or a blueprint which is used to build software application. Visualize it this way: at, let's say you want to build a house and you were shown a land to build a house, and that land is rocky, it's not leveled, it has some hill and some valley. And before you start building that land, if you want to build your house in that kind of land, you need to first of all level the land so it will be smooth. You need to have your foundation digged, you need to layer your blocks, then you start building like that. So if you want to do everything from scratch, that's what you need to do. But with the concept of framework, before you start building, already the land has already been leveled, the foundation has already been laid. What you just have to do is just to, let's say, add your roof, add your windows, paint it, then, just design it to suit your taste. So that's the concept of a framework. So by using a framework, the layers have already been laid for you, the foundations has already been built. What you just have to do is to design it to suit your need, or to design it to so you can use it to do whatever you want to use it for. So that's the concept of framework, and that's what Angular used for building web applications. So with Angular, you can use it and to build any type of applications, like single web applications, enterprise level web applications, progressive web applications, data visualization for real time, dashboard, etc. So anything that runs on the browser can be built using Angular. So what are components in Angular? So components is the fundamental building block of an Angular application. So it's more like a self-contained unit that controls a specific part of the application. So anything you see on the UI, it's a component. Example of components, it's the navbar, the footer, the pages, your card, your services, etc. So different parts of your UI, it's a component. Your entire UI is a component. Your entire page is a component. Different part like your card, your sidebar, your navbar. So all of these are all components. So you can also call component views or UI, etc. Logic can also be called component. So component is the building block of your Angular application. So when components are bundled together, they form the entire applications. So when the entire application is broken down, it's broken down into smaller units, which are called components. So a collection of units or components make up your entire application. So let's proceed to have our Angular project. So before we do that, I'm going to first of all go to the Angular official documentation. So on your browser right here, just search for Angular, and it's going to open this up. You can see the first one is the angular.dev, so click on that, and this is the Angular official documentation page right there. Now, if I come to the left right here and I click on this toggle, you can see it's going to show me the different versions right there. And we are currently on version 21 as at 2026, which is this right here. And if I click on get started, you can see there are a lot of stuff right here. And let me come right here at the left and click on docs. You can see if I click on installation right here, it's going to show me, the requirements and how to set up right there. Okay, so I'm going to proceed to install the CLI, which we'll be using to manage an Angular application. The first requirement for you to have is to make sure you have your node installed on your laptop. If you don't have that, just type node download like that on Google, and it's going to show you the Node.js right here. Click on this and you can proceed to download Node depending on your operating system. If you do not have Node installed already, you can download for Mac, or if you are on a Windows, you can click and download. Okay, so for you to be able to check if you already have Node download, open your terminal right there or your command prompt. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm just going to say node space dash v. Okay, node space dash v is going to show you the current node version you have, doing node space dash v. If by the time you do this and it says no command found, which means that you do not have node. Now the next for us to do after you've downloaded your node is to download the text editor called Visual Studio Code. You can come right here, go to your browser, say Visual Studio Code, and then you can download this right here, code.visualstudio.com. It's an IDE that it's popularly used to build and write your code. It can be your JavaScript code or TypeScript code in the case of Angular. It can be Python code. It can be Flutter code. It can be Java. It can be different stuff right here. So this is the IDE. If you don't have that installed, you can download this and you can select your operating system and download right here. I already have it downloaded, so we'll be making use of that. Now, after you've downloaded your Visual Studio Code, you have your node downloaded, which is from here. The next is for us to install the Angular CLI, which we'll be using to manage an Angular application. And before we do that, again, you go to your terminal right here just to confirm, to check if you have it installed. You do ng, which is a shortcut for Angular space v, which means that I want to check our Angular version. So do ng space v, click enter. And if you have Angular installed, it's going to be something like this. You can see big Angular CLI. It's going to show your CLI version. You can see mine is 21, which is the latest version with what we have right here. So mine is 21. If yours is below 21 or far back, you can update it by running this command to install it. Okay, there's another version. This is my Node.js version right here, 24. My package manager version npm 11, and my operating system is Darwin Arc 64. I'm using a MacBook right here. So this is going to show you the basic information of your Angular and your Node. Okay, but if you do this and you're not able to do this, see this, which means that you do not have Angular installed. So what you have to do is to install the CLI by using npm. So come right here to the documentation, copy this npm install -g, which means you're installing this globally, and the Angular CLI. So copy this right here, come to your terminal right here, paste it right here, click enter, and this is going to help us install our Angular CLI, which will help us to be able to manage and build Angular projects. So let's just wait and see the outcome of this. Already having installed, so you're just going to probably reinstall again, something like that. Okay. Yep. So that's going to help us install Angular. And after we've done that, the next lecture, we're going to create an Angular project by using this command, and then we're going to explain the Angular file structure and other informations that are needed. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create the Angular project. So before I do that, I'm just going to first of all go to GitHub so I can create a folder so you guys can get to see the code for this, for our project and our Angular course. So I'm going to come right here. You know what? I think I'm just going to do this at the background so we'll not waste a little bit of time. And we're just going to proceed to create Angular projects. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to just do this probably after this. So first, let's just head on to create the Angular project so we will not, waste too much time. Now, in the documentation right here, when you go to the installation, it's going to, after you've seen the command to create your CLI, scrolling down, you can see the command to create project. If you don't see this, you can also type it in the search. Let's say you go to the Angular home, you can come to the search right here, and so type in this installation, and then you're going to see installation right here, and again it's going to take you. So with the documentation, you can search for anything, and it's going to show you how it's done. Okay. So now let's create an Angular project. I'm going to come to my terminal or my command prompt or my git bash. I'm just going to cd into a folder right here that's tools, and this way I usually create my courses. And then I'm going to use the command to create an Angular project by using ng, which means Angular, as you can see right here, ng, then space new, which means you want to create a new project, and then you can give it your project name. I'm just going to call this Angular first, something like this. Click enter, and it's going to prompt me to select which of my styling I want to use. You can choose CSS, Tailwind, SAS, and this other one. So let's just stick with CSS. And then it's asking me if I need a server-side rendering, which is no. Let's keep it simple. And then it's asking me, do I need an AI, integration to like an agent, cloud? The course, so the answer is no. Let's don't. If you select any of those, it's just going to create a file for you that you can easily configure to suit the AI you want to, use on your project. So it's not really something, tedious, just to create a file specific for the configuration for that, AI tool. So clicking on is just going to help us do things normally. So I'm going to wait for this to be installed. It's going to take some time depending on the speed of your network. And by the time that is done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to look at the file structure. I'm going to be explaining them one after the other. So as you can see, this has been created right here, and I'm going to open this up in my Visual Studio Code. So have your Visual Studio Code pull up, and then click on New Projects right there. If you are opening your Visual Studio for the first time, it's going to be something like this. It's going to show up like this. Then click on Open Folder like this, and then I'm going to search for where that folder is. So that was in Mac, and that was in my tools right here, and then that was called this Angular course right here. So open it up right there, and it's going to look like this, and like so. So for us to be sure that our project was successfully created, we need to run this to be sure. So open your terminal up right here at the top right here. You're going to see terminal right here. Click on the terminal, click on new terminal. It's going to open something like this. You might see something like the debug console right here. Just click on this to close it up right there. We are only interested in this terminal right here, which is this. So you can just type ls to be sure that you are in the root of the package.json, which is this one right here. Just make sure you're in the root of here because we're going to be using the command there. We're going to be using this right here to run our application. Now, for you to run this, you just type in ng save, which means Angular save. Just type ng save, click enter, and that's going to help run your application. So let's just do that and see the outcome. Before it runs, it's going to try to build it first. Let me zoom this a bit in so we can see. And we can see as it's trying to build, we can see a folder .angular was created for us, which contains the build, code right there. So we can see this is running, and you can access this by going to the localhost and port 4200. So click on that, and you can see this is the project that was created and is currently running. So we've been able to create and run our Angular project. So by this, we can start, building whatever we want to build, and that's going to be shown right here. Now, for those who might be wondering where this is coming from, let me quickly show you right there. Whatever you see right here on your UI is coming from your source folder right here. So if you click on your source right here, you can see the index right here, which is this is what is being run right there. And if you click on the app, inside the app, you can see the app.html. So everything you are seeing right here is coming from this app, is coming from this place right here, this app.html within the app folder. So if I come right here and edit this, let me just come right here and say something. Let me just write something at the top and say hello. Let's just use H1. Say hello, this is me. If I come right here, you can see hello, this is me is being displayed right here. So this to show that okay, whatever we have right here is coming from this app.html, right? Like so, and this was being mounted in the index.html right here. So again, we're going to explain this one after the other. I just want us to see how to run our application and to be sure that it is being displayed correctly. The next lecture, we're going to be looking at each of these files one after the other. There are a lot of them right here, and it can be pretty confusing. We're going to look at each of them and know what they do. Now, before we look at these files right here, let's get to see other ways to run our application and other ways to change our port. So currently right now, as we already said, if you want to run your app, you do ng save like that, and it's going to run your app on the default port, which is 4200, which is what we can see right here. It's running on port 4200 like that. So what other ways can we use to run our app? If you don't want to execute the code ng save directly, which you can see right here, you can also do npm run start. By triggering running this right here is going to also trigger this code at the background. So to do that, you're going to do npm run, then start right here. When you say npm run start, it's going to come to this script right here. It's going to look for the start keyword, and that by using this keyword is going to execute this ng save right here, which is also going to run our app. If you want to build, you do npm run build or npm run watch or npm run test. So you can execute the codes directly by doing ng build, ng test like that. So let's just try npm run start and let's see. I click on that. You can see again our app was run on the same port 4200 like so. Okay, so now what if I don't want my app to be run on port 4200? I want to run on a different port. How am I going to do that? First of all, I'm going to do Control C to stop. I think I didn't really do that. If you want to stop your running app, just do Control C. It's going to stop that. So let me run my app on a different port. To do that, I'm going to do ng. Remember, the ng save is a command to run your app. Do ng save, and then do double dash port, which means that we want to run this on a different port. I can just say I want to run this on port. Let me see, 2027. Click enter. You can see it's now running on port 2027. If I click on that, you can see this is now port 2027, like so. Okay. Now, just to stop that again, Control C. Now, if I do npm, okay, ngserve was the direct command dashboard I used in running that. So if I want to use npm run start, I need to add the port to this script right here so that when this command is triggered, it's going to run it on that specific port. So for us to do that, you come to the script right here in your package.json and give it a space and say double dash ports. Now I'm going to run this application on ports. I can say, let's say 5090. So when I do npm run start, it's going to trigger this command ng-save, and it's going to run that on port 5059. So do npm run start, let's see. You can see ng-save. You can see this is the command that was triggered right here, as you can see right there, which is this command right here. And you can see it's on localhost 5090, which is the port right here. Application is running on this port like that. Okay, so that's how to run your application on different ports. Control C again to stop. You can do ng-save double dash ports, and then you can pass in your ports like so, or you can add the port to the script right here and then execute it like so. I didn't spell myself correctly, and you can see this one is running right here, or you can add a port right here so that if you just want it to be there permanently, and do npm run start, and it's going to trigger the scripts right here. So these are different ways to run our application on different ports. Okay, so now let's head on to look at the various file system right here. So when we created our application, these things we also created for us, and let's get to see what each and every one of them does regarding our project. So let's start from the top right here, which is the .angular folder right here. So what this folder does, it contains the catch directory used by the Angular CLI. So, run our application, to make our application run faster. You can see when we just created their project, this .angular was not there, but when I did ng-save, when I did ng-save to run my application, the .angular catch was done right there, and it took a little bit of time before it was run. And when I subsequently ran the script to run my application, it was very fast because the application has already been cached right here in this .angular folder right here. So this basically contains the catch which for our application, which is make it very easy for our application to start and run whenever we want to run it. So we don't have any business with this folder, just leave it as it is. Now the next folder is the .vs code, and this is automatically generated by our Visual Studio Code, and it contains the settings for our editor, which is the Visual Studio Code. So it's going to be auto created, and right here you can decide to modify your setting. Like let's say you want to do some settings for your IDE right there, you can come right here and modify some settings right here. Let's say you want to change the make the text very large, you want to do all the stuff that can be configured right here. Again, we don't really need this. Let's just leave it as it is. And the next one is the node module. If I open this node module right here, I can see there are a lot of crazy stuff right here. And this contains the library packages that are needed for me to build my application. Now, we might be wondering, where are these things coming from? The files and folders right here, it's coming from the package.json. So I'm going to explain this shortly. In the package.json, we can see our dependencies right here. This helps to register our dependency. Now, the actual code for this dependency, or the actual files, are stored in the node module. Again, when you do your npm install, or you install anything, those things are actually stored in the node modules right here, and the reference is going to be kept in the package.json right here. So again, this file is not to be shipped. You can easily, when I delete this right here, if I delete it right there, which has been deleted, and do npm I, it's going to download all the dependency that I register right here, and those are going to be, you can see, those are going to be re-downloaded and saved in the node module. So that's what the node module is. It's our warehouse for our dependency or our library. Now we also have the public folder right here. So the public folder helps to store static files or images. Like we have the favicon, you can keep your images here, you can have your asset there, your pictures, just help to store static assets. And we have the SROC. The SROC is where we write our code. We're going to be looking at that, spending most of our time within the SROC folder is where we have our code implementation. And moving down, we have the editor config. The editor config tells the editor how it should behave. This is it, just, not really there. It's also auto-generated. We have the .git ignore. So we're using Git is help us to, it tells us the files that we don't want to push to our repo, or we don't want to save in our Git tracker. Okay. Now the prettier, like this basically configuration for the prettier library or the prettier dependency we have right here if you're using prettier. Then we have the angular.json file. It contains the configuration for our entire project. If I open it up right here, you can see it basically tells you this is how I want my projects to be, this is what I want it to be, just the configuration for the entire project. It's basically used when you want to deploy or you want your application to run in a certain way. That's going to be done in the angular.json. And we have the package log.json. This basically contains the receipt for all the dependencies that have been downloaded or used in this project. So whenever you install a new dependency or you remove a new dependency, the receipt is kept in the package log.json right here. You can see there are a lot of bunch of crazy stuff right here. Contain the receipt of the dependency that have been used during this project. Then again, the package.json, which is very important, this contains your project name, the function, the script, which are the commands that are used to run your application. You can see them right here. Then we have the dependency. This is the libraries you need to build your application. You can see we have the forms, the core, the common. We're going to be using each of these dependency. We're going to be learning each of them. So the common, the compile, the core, the forms, the router, RX, TS. These are the things that we need to actually build our project. They are the tools that we need to build anything we want to build using Angular. And the dev dependency right here, we also have the dev. These are only used during the development phase. When you are in production environment, these will no longer be used. So the dev dependency are just to help you when you are building in the dev environment, when you are testing, doing some dev stuff. Like you can see we have the compiler, the prettier right here. You can see TypeScript and all of that. And we have the readme.md. This basically contains a documentation of the basic things you need, like how to run your application by using ngserve, how to generate a component, just a little bit of documentation to help you go about building your project, how to build it for deployment and all of that. And we have the ts config, like that, ts config.app.json. This contains the configuration for whenever the app is run. So it contains the configuration for the running app. Okay, so that's it right here. This is just, we don't really need to bother about this. Everything has been properly set up. Then we have the tsconfig.json. This contains the TypeScript configuration for your entire project when it is not yet running. Like let's say you want to write your TypeScript code, you want to do some stuff, just want to write your syntax before it is running. This help you to, this where the configuration is. Again, we don't have to do anything. everything has been properly set up. Then we have the tsconfig.spec.json. So this is the TypeScript configuration for testing the TypeScript file. So whenever you see .spec, you know that this is a test file or a test configuration. So this basically specify the configuration for our compiler when we are running a unit test or when we are testing our application. So the tsconfig is the TypeScript configuration for the entire project before it is running. The tfconfig.app is for our running application, while the tsconfig.spec is a TypeScript configuration for our compiler during unit test. So when we are writing our test file, this is the configuration that it just checks. So again, we don't need to do anything right here. All of them has been properly set up for us. All we just need to focus on is the SRC directory. We're going to be looking at this in the coming lectures. So let's look at the extensions that we need in our Visual Studio Code so we can effectively write and run the Angular, we can effectively write Angular codes just to make things easier. So right here, if you go to this right here, which is the extension right here, and if I move down, I do not have the Angular extension, but we can easily do that by coming right here to the recommended, or you can come right here and search for Angular like that, to search for Angular, and it's going to show the Angular language support right here, Angular language service. So you can install this, or you can install this other one right here, Angular snippet. So either of them, you can install them just to make but by default, I'm not going to do that because VS Studio Code is already optimized to help detect an Angular or a TypeScript syntax. Okay, then also you can, let me show you the theme I'm using. This is the theme I'm using right here, the Learn with Summit theme. In case you want to use it, you can also use it. This is the theme I'm using for my editor, right? Then also, if you come right here, you can see that my folder has some little bit of fancy stuff right here. You can see, so that is happening because I'm using this extension called the Material Icon theme. So when you have this extension, it's going to add some little bit of colors to your folders right here. So if you want to use exactly what I'm doing, that is what this is where it's coming from, the Material Icon theme, and then the Learn with Summit theme right there. Okay. Also, if you want to install the Angular language support, you can just click on that to install that. If you don't do that, everything it's fine. So these are some of the extensions I just want to show that will be helpful for the Angular project. So let's head on. So now let's dive deep to see how this page is actually rendered. Again, as you rightly said, all our codes are in the SRC folder, which is the source folder right here. If you open the source folder, you're going to see the index.html, the main.ts, and then the style.css. So the style.css right here, whatever you have right here is going to be applied globally to all your component, all your pages, whatever you are doing. The style right here is going to be applied to that page. Then we have the main.ts, which what this does, it collects your app right here, which I'm going to show shortly. Within the app right here, you can see we have a lot of stuff right here. The CSS, the app HTML, the router. It bundles all the application right here, which is your app, and then renders it or inject it into the index.html, which is what you can see right here. So the index.html, which is this file, is what displays everything irrespective of the page you are, whether you are in your home page, in your about page, in your contact page, in your product page. Everything is being run by this page. So the way it works is whatever page you are is going to be rendered right here and then displayed up right here. So we're going to see how that works. So these are very important files. The index.html, it's what output whatever you see on the page, whatever page you are, is being outputted by the index.html. And the main.ts, what this does, it bundles your application, which is where we're going to be writing our components, our pages, and everything. It bundles the application and then renders it or inject it into this right here, which is being rendered and displayed right here. An example of how this work is within the app. So the app right here is where we'll be writing all our components, our pages, and etc. So if I open the app right here, we can see we already have a dummy HTML page right here, a dummy HTML page right here. Then CSS right here goes here. Then we have the app.config right here, which is a configuration for entire application. Then we have the routes right here. We have the dot spec. When you see the dot spec, know that this is where you write your unit test. So this is going to be used to test whatever implementation we have in our app right here. Then we have the app.ts, which is the controller, or let me just see, let me say, which is what controls the app.html. So app.ts is what controls the app.html. And the app.css is the style for the app.html. So in an Angular application, the way it's structured is you have the component, which is the .ts right here. This is the component. We have the HTML, the templates. We have the CSS, which is the styling. So the component right here, or the TypeScript file, controls the template, which is the HTML, and then the style of the HTML is coming from the CSS. So when you have the app.css, you also have the app.html, or you will have the app.ts. Let's say we have a home page, which is going to be home.ts, which is a component. We're going to also have a corresponding home.html, which is a template, and we also have the home.css. So this is how Angular projects, or this is how the Angular folder structure is and how they work, etc. Now, let's look at the app.ts. Again, we say this is the app.html. We're going to see that this is what is being displayed right here. And right here, we can see this CSS right here. This is styling. I can copy all the styling out of here. Let me first of all copy everything out. Right, if I remove the styling right here, you can see, let me refresh. Okay, my app is not running. Let me run that. ng save. Okay, app is running on this port right here, 4200, because I'm doing ng save. So if I do npm run start, is going to use the new port we specified, which is 1890. Okay, so let's do this and get to see. So if I come right here, you can see because I removed the CSS, the styling was no longer there. Now, if I come right here and come to the app.css and place the CSS right there, let me remove this script, the styling right there. And if I come right here, you can see the styling has now come back. So that shows that the app.css styling controls what you have in the app.html. And then the app, wherever you have the component right here, controls everything in the HTML. Okay, so that's basically what it is. And then if you move up right down, let me remove this, you can see it's all called the router outlet. So what this means is that whatever page you are is going to be displayed right here. So with the router outlet, you can have millions of pages. What you just have to do is whenever you're on that particular page, that page is going to be displayed up, is going to be replaced. That page is going to replace this router outlet, and then is going to then be displayed. So again, all our implementation is going to be inside the app right here, and whatever page we have right there, or whatever page we're into, is going to be bundled and placed in the router outlet, which everything will be bundled and then rendered by our main.ts inside the index.html. So that's how it works. And yep, so within the app folder right here, we have the app.route. Here we have to register all our routes so that they can easily be placed right here in the router outlet. So this has already been configured in the backend for us. All you just want to do is just to understand what we need to do, how the routing works, how pages work, and then just make use of the framework to build whatever we want to do. So Angular is very, very simple. It's not complex, and That's just the basic. So understand that the index.html is what displays everything. The main.ts is what injects your application into the index.html. And the style.css is your global styling where you can have your global style. Then inside the app right here, we have the basic home or the root, which is the app.html. And then right here, we have the router applet, which helps to mount where we mount our pages on. If I'm on the contact page, I'm going to mount it right here. If I'm on the, let's say, product page or service page, that's going to be mounted right here. Okay. And then we have the router right here. Here I can register my pages, which will help my application to know what particular page I am in. So this is everything we need to know. And in the next lecture, we are going to start doing something. So before I do that, let me just come to my app.html. Let me just get rid of everything right here. Get rid of everything, right? Come to the CSS, get rid of everything. Let's just start from a new, let me just get rid of this right here. Let's start from a new template. So if I come right here, you can see it's currently blank because there's nothing right there, okay? Now let me just come right here and say, right, my H1 and say, hello, this is my home. Oh, let me just say hello, how are you? Are you? And you can see hello, how are you is here. If I want to style this, I can come right here and say class. Let me just say hello. And then I'm going to go to my app.css right here and style the hello class right here. And I'm just going to say background color. Let me just say aqua. If I come right, you can see background color has been added to it. So this is basically how it's done. And if I get rid of this right here, you can see everything is down. Again, if I come right to the, let me close my app. If I come to the style.css right here and paste this styling right here, you can see it's been infected because, again, as we rightly said, the style.css is where you have your global styling. So whatever you have right here is going to be is going to affect all your components. But whatever you have in each specific, folder right here is going to affect that specific code. Okay. Yep. So that is it. And let me just come back to my app.css and have this up right here, and then it's been displayed. Okay. So in the coming lecture, I'm going to show you how to create different components and how to register the routes. We're just going to look at that. We're going to start by having the home page, and we're going to look at directive, different things, just the basic, the core functionality of Angular. By the time we are done with that, you should be able to understand Angular and do whatever you want to do. So I'm going to see you in the next lecture. So let's move on to see how to create a component in Angular. So it's very simple. So for you to do that, you just pull up your terminal up like so. Let me clear this. And then you use this command ng, which means Angular, G, which means generate, C, which means component, and you type in your component name. That let's just create a home page by calling it home. When you type in this command, ng space G space C space your component name, is going to create 4 folders for you. It's going to create a one folder which contains a 4 files, right? That's going to be created within the app folder. Again, we said that all our implementation is going to be within the app folder. So if I open the app folder right here, you can see a folder home was created for me. And if I open that home, you can see it contains the home.css. This one, it contains the home.html, which is our template. It contains our test file, which is the home.spec.ts, and then our component, which is the home.ts right here. So this is how to create your component. With this, you can create any component. You can have your navbar, your footer, a back page, home page, anything. Create your custom cards. With your CLI tool, you can create your pipes, you can create your services, whatever you want to do, it can easily be done. So this is how to create a component. If you don't want to do this, you can actually create a component manually, but it's tedious to do. Just imagine me coming right here to create a folder, creating all of these files right here. It's really, really tedious. So by using the CLI NGGC, your component name is going to create your component for you. Okay. So now let's get to see this component right here. You can see this is the home, nothing is there. This is the template, nothing is there. This is styling, nothing is there. This is the spec, and this is the home component right here, and nothing is there. And now if I run my npm run start, if I run this right here, which is going to build and run for me, and if I open this up right here, you can see, I mean, there's nothing there. It's just showing me what I have in my app template right here. So how am I going to render this component I just created? So how is that done? It's very simple. Well, for us to do that, again, if you come to your app.html, let's say, you can leave this or you can get rid of this. It's not a problem. So whatever page we are is, as we rightly said, is going to be replaced up right here. So a better way for us to structure this is to carry this route outlet right here, which is going to be where our page will be mounted. Just have the router outlet within this main right here, and then I'm going to then want this router outlet to be replaced by what I have in my home page. For me to do that, I'm going to come to my app.routes.ts. This is where all the routes will be registered, so that when I go to that page, it's going to then display that page right here, and then we can then see it right here in our browser. So I'm going to go to the app.route.ts. If you are confused where this is the root of your app right here. Okay, so this is the routes where we register all our pages or all our routes. So I'm going to come right here, and within this array right here, I'm going to say the path, right, is going to be, let's say, if the home, which means that when you are on the home part, we need to display the home component. By saying component to display is going to be the home right here, which we just created, and we can see that home has been imported. If you're not able to import it like that, you can import it manually. So with this, if I go to the home page route, it's going to display this home component. So let's try it out. Make sure your app is running. So come right here. If I do /home, we can see home works. So this has been displayed, right? So let me add a little bit of style to this home, this P right here. I will come to the CSS, say P. I'm just saying, going to say tests. Let me see, I don't know. Let me just increase the font size to like large, something like that. And then I can just say color to like, let me just say, let's say brown. If I come right here, you can see home works like that, right? So this has been properly displayed. I can say background color to be like, I don't know, maybe something like this. And you can see the home works right here. So this is how to create component and then to register your route. So it's very easy. If I come to the app.html right here, and if I get rid of this router outlet, you can see our homepage is gone, right? So wherever you are, you won't be able to render what you have right here. So that's the importance of what this router applet does. It helps to render our routes for our page. It can be your home page, your about page, your product page. Whenever you are on that part, which is this part right here, that component is going to be mounted on this right here, and then it will be rendered right here. So again, for recap, so we can be clear, you want to create your component, right? Just come right here and do ng generate c component, your component name. After you've done that, you come to the app.route.ts to register that component. If it's a page or a route, you register that component right there. If it's not a route, you don't need to register that. Then you go to the component right there, you write to implementation, all we have to do, and when you go to that route, it's automatically going to render right here. So we can see Angular is very, very, very easy and straightforward, and is very sweet. So in the next lecture, we're going to create our navbar and footer, so we can get to see how a real, you know, UI page is, and then we're going to see how to display both your navbar, your footer, and some other pages together. I'm going to see you in the next lecture. Let's head on to create our navbar and footer and then display it up right there. Similarly, the way we create our component, we can also use the same syntax to create our navbar. So I'm going to pull my terminal up right here, and to do that, ng gc and then call it navbar. So that is it. Remember, navbar is a component, footer is a component, your page is a component. These are all components. So this is the CLI command to create it. Click enter, and that's created our component navbar. So again, if I go to my SROC, my app right here, you can see a folder navbar was created for me. And if I open that, I can see my navbar.cxx, my template, and then my test, and then my component right here. So let's proceed to create our navbar. Again, want to be able to create our navbar and then display it in every application we are in. For us to do that, I'm just going to first of all come right here to the navbar.html and then write my navbar. So I'm just going to say nav. This is a basic HTML template, so it's not supposed to be stressful. I'm going to have my div, have my a link right there, and then I'm going to have my UL, my LI, and then do my stuff. So here I'm going to have my home like that. Let me just have my about, and then let me have my contacts like so. And then that's it. If I come, let me run my app, npm run start. If I come right here, and you can see nothing, our navbar is not showing, nothing is happening because we've not displayed it. Again, for us to display our nav, I'm going to come, because this is not a route, I don't need to come to here to register it because it's not a route. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to render it on my app.html right here. So I'm going to come to my app.html, and then right here, I'm going to get a reference to the app navbar, which you can get from the navbar.ts. So come to the navbar.ts, you can see the selector right here, which says that this is the unique identifier for this component. Okay. Yeah. So I think I should have explained this earlier. I think I was too fast. Let's just do that quickly. Now, when you create a component, as we rightly said, you're going to have the TypeScript file, which is your component. You're going to have the template, which is your HTML, and you're going to have the CSS. Now, if you go to the component right here, you can see it's being annotated with add component, which is telling us, hey, this is a component. And right here, it has our selector, which is the unique identifier for that component, which means that by using this keyword right here, you can use this component anywhere in the application by just making reference to this selector right here. So that's what the selector means, that this is the unique identifier for this component right here. Then you also have your import right here. With this, you can bring things from anywhere, which can then be used in this component. You can bring in, let's say I can import components from other places right here to be used within this component. I can bring in my services. I can bring in anything I want to bring to be used. So that is what this import is, and that's going to be registered right here. Now we also have the template, which says that, hey, this is the template for this component, right? So this is what this is, and is giving the direction to where this template is, which is in navbar.html right here. So that says that, hey, this is a template that is rendered when this component is being used. Okay. Then the styling for this component is also giving a reference to this right here. So that's what this stuff it means, and then we are exporting it. We can see we're importing the component from the angular.core, which we can see from right here, Angular core right here in our package.json, which is the Angular core right here. That is where we are importing the component from, which we can see right here. Okay, so this is it, and I'm going to use the selector to render this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all go to the app.html, right? I'm going to come right here and say I want to the app bar right here. I want to bring this in. So this is always going to be displayed. Now, if I just bring in this component right here, it's not going to work. It's going to throw me an error right here by saying that, okay, we don't really know what you're trying to do, but we know you are trying to do something. You can see there's an error right here. Now, for us to do that, I need to come to the controller for this template, which is the app.ts. Remember, this is what is controlling the app.html right here, which is app.ts. And right here, I need to register that in the import. Remember, the Navbar is a component, and as already rightly said, if I want to bring in other components to be used within a component, I have to register the incoming component as an import. Okay, so now since I want to put the navbar within this component right here, I need to register it in the controller for that component, which is this. So come right here within the import, put in a comma and say nav bar. We can see the number has been imported and this has then been registered. So because I've registered the number right here, I can then make use of that selector right here within the template of the app component. So if I pull in my terminal, you can see the error is gone because it has worked. It has been registered successfully. Now, if I go to my browser right here, you can see this is the navbar showing up, and this dummy stuff is still there because this was placed above the navbar. So if I put my H1 down below right here, you can see the H, this is now below the navbar. Okay, so this is how it's done. I'm just going to head on to style the navbar and then do things properly. So again, I'm just going to come back to the navbar right here, and I'm going to first of all quickly have my dummy style. Again, this is not a CSS course, so I'm not going to be emphasizing on the styling. I'm just going to write the styling at the background, copy it, have it up right there. Then the code is already there. I'm going to share the repo for this code, and then you can go right there, get hold of it, and then just look at the CSS and then follow as move on. So I'm going to come right here to the nav.css, have the some styling right there, just a simple navbar styling. I'm going to come right here and then write my nav properly. So again, I'm going to have the class name right here called navbar. This is going to suit what I had the styling I have right here. And then for this div, I'm just going to have a class name called container, which I already have. Then for the A right here, I'm going to have a class called logo. And then for this UA right here, I'm going to have a class called nav. Let me say link into like this. And then for the A right here, I'm going to, let's say, have an A right here. I'm going to have my home, and then let me just do this. Let's just leave it as home only for now. And then if I make sure I'm having no error, if I come back right here, you can see this is my navbar. It's a little bit crazy, and this is the home right here, which is, I think it's a little bit okay. We can have multiple things by having my about, and then let's say service. Let's say about and service, and we can see the home, about, and service is displayed right there. Okay, now so I'm just going to head on in the next lecture to have my footer and my, let's say, home and about and contact page, stuff like that, and then we're going to proceed to have our implementation. So same way, let's have our footer so we can display our footer properly, so our page will look a little bit okay. So before I do that, in my local right here, let me just call this my app so that we have my app displayed right here. This is a little bit better. So to create a footer, again, come right here and generate your component by doing nggc call it footer like that. And that's going to create a folder for me, footer, and contain the necessary stuff for me. So again, I'm going to come to my footer component right here. We already know what this means. This is the selector. This is going to be the import. If I want to use anything on this component, I have to bring it down right here. This is a template and this is a style. So the first thing I want to do right here is to display the current year. So I'm going to come right here and have the variable, right? So this is where we write all our variable and our stuff that we put in our data. So I'm going to come right here to the footer.ts and say current. Let me just say, here's the current year. That's going to be, okay, let's just say a number by using TypeScript. So that's going to be the new date. Oh, I'm saying new date. And then I'm just going to say new date. Let me invoke it and then dot get full year like that. So this is going to help get the full year we are currently at, which is 2026, as at this time of this lecture. Now we need to display this value right here in the template, which is the footer. Now let's do that. I'm going to come right here, and then let me just get rid of this and say footer like this. And then I'm just going to wrap this within a div. I'm just going to say P and say Absalom. Where's Absalom? I don't want to have that copyright kind of logo. I think it's this one, copy like that, okay? And then I'm just going to use this variable to get the current year. This is what we call interpolation, which I'm going to be discussing in the subsequent lecture, okay? So I'm just going to say current year, which is the value right here, current year. So this has to reference a variable from, the component file from your HTML. So come right here, do your double, code block, pass in the variable name, and then I just say my app and say all right, reset, something like that. Okay. Then I think this is all we need to do. Then I'm going to have my styling right here, which I'm going to call footer. I'm going to write that quickly. And here I'm going to have my styling called container. And I'm going to just have those styling dummy, just place right here. Just won't waste time. Okay. Right. So right now, if I run my app, npm run start, I'm not expecting to see the footer because I have not placed the footer in my app template. So for me to do that, we know how to do it. You can just pause this and try to display the footer at your end so you can understand how the best it works. If you're not able to do that, we're going to do that together. But just pause the video and try to do that at your end. Okay, so let's display the footer together. The first thing you have to do is go to the app. Make sure you're seeing the app folder. Go to the app.ts right here. Right here where you have the navbar, we need to import the footer because we want to be using the footer component. So import the footer right here first. Then go to the app.html and want the footer to be displayed down below right here. So we just use the footer selector. That's going to be, if you don't know, go to the footer.ts. This is the selector called app footer. So copy that, come right here and say app footer, and then boom, that has it, right? So you can just probably just do this so you can have, so right here we have, the app footer should be after the router outlet so that it will be displayed below. Remember, the router outlet is where all your pages will be. Let's say your home page or a bad page, all your pages will be within the router outlet. So we want the footer to be displayed after, that's below the page, under the page, and the navbar to be displayed above the page. So if I put the navbar below the router outlet, the number will be displayed under your page, and then it's not going to make sense, right? Good. So make sure you have the right structure. Your app bar should be at the top. The app footer should be at the top below, and then your router outlet should be at the middle, which is where your page will be seated. Okay, so again, always check to make sure that you are not having errors. Then I'm going to come back right here. You can see this is the footer right here, displayed right here, and this H1 is here. So if I move the app bar just to confirm this, let's say below here, and the H1 is up, and you can see the H1 is below the nav bar, right? So like how it works. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just move this H1 away from here and have it within my home page. So here's my home page. This is my home page. Just have your H1 right there. And then if I go to /home, you can see this is the home page right here. And then this is our navbar at the top, the footer below, and the home page right here. I can just say hello, welcome to the home page. Let me just say hello, welcome to the home page so we can be sure. This is it. Hello, welcome to the home page. So again, if I go to the root, there's nothing displayed. So if I want the home page to be the default, I can do that by coming to the router right here. By the app.route.ts, I want to say, hey, I want the home page to always be the root, of your page, by coming right here and say, put in a comma and say path again. So if the path is a white card, if it does not match anything, redirect to the home page, right? Okay, good. So let's test this out. Again, just make sure you have no errors. So right now, if I type in anything right here, it's going to redirect to the home page. If I don't pass it anything, if I go to the root of the app, it's going to redirect to the home page. So this means that if there's any route I'm trying to access that does not exist, it's going to by default redirect me to the home page, which is where we are right here. So that's going to help us prevent having an empty page that does not exist. So this is how to display the navbar and the footer. And in the coming lecture, we're going to be looking at interpolation. We've already done that right here. Where you see the footer, we already done that. Interpolation is how to display the data in your template. We have data in our component right here. So how can we display those data in the corresponding template of that component? So that's what interpolation is. We're going to be looking at interpolations in the coming lectures. We're going to be looking at directives. We're going to be looking at a lot of things. Okay. So again, just try to understand the basic, how to, create your component, how to register your routes, how to, just how to do the basic things, and that's it. So I'm going to see you in the next lecture. So let's create some more components, and then we're going to look at data binding. Okay. I'm going to close this up right here, close all. I'm going to open my terminal right here, Control C. I'm going to create 2 extra components, which I'll be using to teach and explain some stuff. So let's create 2 extra components or pages by using ng gc. I'm just going to call this data. You can do dash binding or anything. You can call it anything. You can call it services, contacts. It does not really mean. I'm going to create this component right here. And we can see right here a folder data binding was created for me. This is a component. It's going to be acting as a page. Let me also create another component called a directive ng-gc. Let's just call it directives or direct anything. Okay, click enter, and then we can see another folder directive was created for me. Okay, now I'm going to, first of all, let me just run my app. npm runs starts, or you can do ng-save. Either of them is okay. If you do ng-save, it's going to run on port. I think the default port is 4200, so let's just do that. Okay, again, if I come, we can see this is my page and it's moving very fine. So first of all, when you create 2 components and you want those components to act as a page, the next thing you to do is to register that component as a page. That can be done by going to the app.routes right here. I'm going to register those two right here. Copy this. I'm just going to want this to be called. Let me just call this, I don't know. Let me just say data, or it can be anything. And this one, let me just say directive. So component with this is going to be, let's say, data binding. That's been imported, and this one is going to be directive component. You can see if I say directive, there are different directives. This one is from the core, this one is for the compiler, and this one is from the component. So just be sure that you are importing from the component you created, because directive is a specific keyword in Angular and it can mean a lot of things. So I just had to use that as a component so I can explain some basic stuff. Okay, so that is it. So right now, if I go to the /data, let's test that out. If I go to the /data, you can see data binding. Well, it took me to the data binding page. If I go to, let's say, directives, you can see, okay, this one. Okay, I think directive. Okay, I think it's called directive. Okay, you can see directives work. Let me just add an S to make it directives, something like that. Okay, directives, and you can see this works. So we've been able to create 2 extra components, and we'll register those components as our route. And when we go to those route, is going to take us to that component. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to navigate to those pages from my navbar right here. So if I click right now, if I click on this navbar, you can see nothing is going to happen because I've not set it up to direct to the actual page right there. So let's do that. I'm going to come to my navbar right here in my HTML index. I'm going to say right here, and normally in Angular, let me do first of all just call this data, let's say data binding. You can say example or something, and this one let's just say directives, I don't know. Or let's say example, something like that. So right, currently nothing is going to happen. We're already aware of that. Let me just say example so we can be sure of what we are doing. Examples like that. Okay, you can see, so these are the pages right there. So the best way things are done in Angular is not for you to use the href, right? So there's what Angular called the router link. So when you click on it, it's going to automatically take you to that particular page which is registered in your route right here. So for us to do that, we need to import the router link in the TypeScript component that controls the template. So go to the navbar right here, and at this place right here, I'm going to import what I call the router link, right? That's going to be called router link right here. You can see this is coming from the Angular router. Where is the Angular router coming from? That is right here in the Angular, where is it, router right here, which is being part of the dependency. You can see everything is coming from somewhere. So by having the router link imported right here, we can then use the router link to move from one page to another. So come to the navbar.html right here, and for this one right here, I'm going to say, when you click on my app, I'm going to say router link. Where is it? I'm going to have something called router link, capital L to be link, and that's going to go to the /home page. Okay, then for this one right here, for the A right here, there's nothing like href anymore. I'm going to say router link equal to, and then I'm going to say it should go to the home/home. Then when I click, so by this, when you click on the home, it's going to just trigger the home route and then take you to the home page. For this other one, for the data binding, I'm going to say router. You can see when I'm typing router link, it's not auto completing for me because I do not have the Angular installed. So you can just come right here to see the Angular language support and install this one right here. Okay, good. So for this data binding, when I click on need, I want to route to the /data. I think that was what I called it right here in my app route, the data. While the other one, which is the directive example. I'm going to say router link. When I click on it, it should take me to the directives page right here. Now, if I come right here, you can see it's working fine. Now, for me to use that route, I need to register the router link right here in the import of the Navbar component. So if I don't have this right here, let me get rid of that. It's not going to work, right? So let me get rid of that and let's test that out. If I click data binding, you can see nothing is going on because it does not know what this router link is. But if I come right here and leave the router link registered and I come right here, you can see binding, the binding, it goes to the binding page, directive example, it goes to the directive page, home, it goes to the home page. You can see all our pages are working. So this is how pages and routing works in Angular. Very, very easy, simple. You don't need to do much. It's very, very, very easy. Okay. So there's another thing I want us to also use. If I am on the data binding page, I want another line to be here, which is going to let me do that on this page. If I'm on the directive page, I just want this to be underlined, right? So there's a way for us to do that by using the router link active. And before you have to do that, you need to import it again right here in the components of your Navbar. So come right here within the imports and say router link active. After you've done this right here, you go to your template and then you can then specify what will happen when it is active. So right here in my home page, I'm going to say if I'm in the home page, I need to say router capital L, small letter NK router link, then capital A, C, small letter A, C, I, A, C, T, I, V, E, and that's going to be equal to then active. So by this doing right here, if I'm on the home page, you can see there's this underline right there and the color is right there. Okay, I'm just going to have that in every other link so that when they're active, we can get to see. So copy this, have it right here, have it right here, and that's it. So if I'm on the data binding page, you can see this is active, this is data binding. If I'm on this directive page, this is the directive, and this can say kind of very cool. And so this is just what I want to achieve by using the router link right here. So that is it. This is how routing works. This is how to create components, how to move from one page to another. And I think we'll stop right here. So next lecture, we are going to continue with the data binding. We are going to see some data binding example, such as interpolation, the property binding, the how to display images, event binding, two-way data binding, one-way data binding. All of these will be treated in as we move further. Let's head on to look at some core Angular features. So the first on our list will be interpolation. So one of the reasons why I'm using these terms, it's in a situation where we are in an interview section and we are being asked what interpolations are, what data binding are, what is one-way data binding, what are two-way data binding, what is property binding, what it's event binding, this kind of things are things that will be asked in an interview questions. So instead of us to just only know how to build application, it's also appropriate for us to get to know these terms so that be familiar with them and will be able to pass interview questions. So my aim for this course is not just for us to be able to build anything using Angular, is for us to also get familiar with the technical terms so we'll be able to answer interview questions properly. So let's look at interpolation. So interpolation is basically a way of displaying data in our HTML template. So let's get to see that. Now we already, in the last lecture, we already had we created two extra component of pages, which is this one right here, just to show the example. So let's just head on to show what interpolation means. We already did that when we had our footer the way we displayed our year right here, this is exactly what interpolation is by displaying a data on our template. So again, if I come to my footer, you can see this is current year, and this is the value is being gotten from this right here. So this is what interpolation means, a way of displaying data from your component in your template file, like so. So let's head on to have some examples in our data binding page right here. So I'm going to come right here within my data binding right here. I'm going to just have a comment and say interpolation example. And right here, I'm just going to have some variable called title. And this, I'm just going to say data binding. So I want to be able to display this variable right in the template right here. So that's what data binding, that's what interpolation means. So then I'm just going to say the course name. I'm just going to call this Angular, let's 21, or you can say 22 at the time of you, watching. Then let me have my student count. For this course, I'm expecting a 2,000 plus students are going to be enrolled in this course. And yep, so that's just it. So I'm just going to do this. I want to display this data in my HTML template. So also do that, I'm just going to come to my HTML template right here, and I'm just going to have my div, and then h1, which is going to be, I want to display the title, which is this one. For us to do that, we're going to do this by using a curly brace or curly bracket, which is like this, by having a double, you can have one curly bracket and add a double curly bracket, and then pass in the name. This is going to reference it directly in the template in the component and display it right there in the template. So this is what interpolation is, and this is how we can display data variable. Okay, so that's it. I want to also do other things, and then just want to have my div, and then let me just say h2 interpolation, and then just grab my p, and then I want to display other things, like that's going to be other data. Okay, I want to say use, I'm not really doing anything, I just want to display this other data, course name as student. Just want to display in a fancy way by saying let me see, okay, display data from component to template. And before I move on, this is also what we call, this is also a one-way data binding. A one-way data binding is a way where we, where data move in one direction, which is from either from your component directly to your template only, or from your template to your component only. So it just starts one-way binding. Like what we are doing right here, it's a one-way data binding. We have a data right here in our component, and we are displaying it in the template, which is a data one-way data binding. Now the other one, which is what we call a two-way data binding, is where we display component, where we pass in data from the component to the template, and also from the template to the component. So that's what we call two-way data binding. And we're going to be also seeing how to do that, and those is we're going to be doing that, covering that also right here. Okay, so this is one way data binding. We're just getting hold of the data and displaying it right here in the component. So let's head down. I'm just going to copy this and paste this. I'm then going to say the direction for this is a one-way data binding, which means that it's going to be data is going to move from component. So I can use an arrow right here to template, which I'm just going to say it's a one way, like that. Okay. Right, so moving down, let me, you know, just have some display my course title, and that's going to be use a double curly bracket and course, call it course title, which is course name. Okay, I think this was called course name. Okay, course name, this is going to display the course name. I can display the number of students and the other data by saying students. That's going to be the student count, like that. Yep. Okay. And I think that's it, which is okay. Or I can say expected students. I don't know. I'll just leave it as simple as it is. And I'm going to have some design just to make this look a little bit beautiful by giving a class name demo. This one I'm going to give a class called example. And this one I'm going to give a class which called container. So I already have like a dummy of this class, this styling for this already out, and that can be gotten right here. The template I already have the styling out right here, so I'm just going to copy it, and then I'm going to leave a link where you can also copy and display right there. I'm just going to copy that, come to my CSS file, have it up right there, and let's just test this out. Pull up your terminal, make sure your app is running correctly. So I'm going to come right here to my page. You can see data binding. This is it right here. This is data binding. If I go to this, so this is our example. You can see course is Angular 21. The expected student is 2000. So let me, I think I'll be expecting more students in this course. Let me just take it to 3000. Let's say 3005. And this is Angular space 21, and you can see it right here like that. So this is what interpolation is, and this is how interpolation is done. In the next lecture, we're going to look at property binding. See you in the next course. So let's head on to look at property binding. So what is property binding or property binding? So property binding is a way to set HTML properties. A property can be a HTML tag, an attribute, such as an alt, an sroc, this kind of stuff. A way of setting the properties of a HTML from your data variable. So right here in your HTML right here, we have, let's say I have an image like this, and I have an sroc. So for me to set the value of this sroc from the data coming from right here, that's what a property binding is. Or I want to set an alt, or let's say I have, let's say, a tag p, and I want to, let's say, add a style, kind of conditional, add a style, and I want to get the data from my components, not statically. So that is what property binding is. Okay, now that can be done by using your square brackets. So whenever you see a square bracket in your template, know that we are doing property binding. So whenever you see a double curly braces right here, know we are doing interpolation. So let's have some example for property binding. So I'm going to copy this right here and say property binding example. I just want to, let's just have a button, and let's have button tests. And I'm just going to give the value to be called submit. Let's just say submit form, something like that, right? Yeah. So I just want to say is button disabled. I want to just have a variable called false, and then I just want to have my input placeholder, and then I just want to, you can just say, let's say John Doe or any other thing. So these are like variables right here. So I want to conditionally pass these variables as a property on our HTML template. So this is what property binding is. Okay. So I'm going to come right here in my HTML template, and then I'm just going to create. Let me just move down right here, and let me create. I don't know where that can be done. Let me see. Okay, let me just, I don't know. Let's just move down right here and create a div. Let me add a comment right here. So this can be interpolation example. So when you get over the code, you can see what it is. This one right here is going to be property binding example, like that. So right here, I'm going to, let me just say, I have, let me give this a class called example. And then I'm going to say, let me just move down right here. I'm going to just say h2, just a dummy text to say property binding, something like that. And then I'm going to have my P right here, just something like this. Let me copy this. Just copy this. So you can, get to see that. And this is going to be, let me see, set HTML. This is just to explain what property binding is. Property / element dynamically. I think I'm having difficulty typing because I'm a bit lazy today. For the direction again is your template, your component, your template. Again, the property binding is a one-way data binding. So in case we are asked in an interview question, is property binding a two-way data binding or a one-way? It's a one-way data binding. Interpolation, is it a one-way data binding or a two-way data binding? It's a one-way data binding. Okay, so that's it. So let me just move down again to then have the examples right here. So I'm going to give the class demo again. And here I'm going to have a button. Remember, button has properties. So for you to also do a property binding, I'm going to do, you can see you have you're going to have this thing right here called square brackets. When you see a square bracket, know that we are doing property binding. So remember, a button has an attribute which can be called disabled. If I get rid of that, there's what we call disabled like this. This by default is going to disable the button, right? And then let me just display the button color using, let me display the button using the button text right here. This is then interpolation again. So let's do interpolation to display the button text. So if I come right here, you can see this is the button by default is disabled, right? Because I said disabled. So what we do right here, this is not property binding. This is the default way to do this. Now, if I want to disable this button using property binding, I'm just going to say, put in my bracket right here. I'm going to say disabled. So which means that if it's going to, I'm going to say disabled, it's going to check equal to, it's going to check if this value right here is true or false. So it's the disabled button. So let's say, so that means that the value of this disabled is going to be dependent on if this is true or false. So by default right now, this is false. So if I come right here, you can say this submit button is not disabled. You can see there's this cursor right here. If I turn this value to be true, and I come right here, you can see the cursor is gone. You can see right here, the cursor is gone. It's now like black. So which means this has been disabled. So this is how property binding works. Let me just make this to be false. So this is how property binding works, and like that. Okay. Now let me just move on to have a placeholder. Like let's have an input like this, and let me say placeholder. So by default, this is done. You see placeholder, you just pass it. You can just say enter your name and be something like this, right? And it's going to have the placeholder right here to say enter your name. But if you want to get the value of this placeholder from our components, we're going to be using the property binding again. How am I going to do that? I'm just going to put in my bracket right here. my square bracket right here, and then this is going to be a variable which is going to be called from here in placeholder. So the value of this variable right here is going to be what will be displayed, and right here we can see the value is John Doe. We can see the default right there, placeholder. So that is how property binding works. When you see a square bracket like this, know we are doing property binding. When you see a double curly braces, know we are doing interpolation. So this is the property binding example, and in the next lecture we are going to look at property binding to display images. Okay, so let me stop this for now so we can wrap our head over this. So let's look at how to display images. So I'm going to move down right here. Let me just scroll down and say display images. So this is not just for images, it's for images, for videos, for audio, and for other things. So basically the same pattern. I'm just going to be having to display image just to show. So we are going to be display image using both the property binding and the regular SRC attributes. So first of all, let me have my div right here, and then this is going to give a class demo. And then to display an image, remember as HTML, you just have to have your, what's this? You just have to have your image tag like that. And when you have your image tag, you have your source, and then you have your alt, which is going to be displayed if the source is not there. Now, traditionally, if you want to display an image, you have to pass in a link to where the image is. So that can either be the part where the image is, or let's say the link directly. So let's first of all find an image and then display. Before then, I said that the public file folder, it's where our static file are. You can also decide to create your own custom folder and place your static files such as images, videos right there. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to have my static files right here in the public. So I'm going to look for some images already. Just download some image online. It can be right here. I already have like 2 images right here. You can download any image online and then just have them in your public folder right here. You can see I have my butterfly, and then this image, like I don't know who this guy is, but kind of look cool. So these are the 2 images right here. I want to display this in Angular. So the first thing, I'm just going to come right here, and then I'm just going to say dot slash. When you do dot slash, it's just going to, if it's a static image, it's going to just come to the public folder and then scan it and get what you want. If your image is not, you want to pass in an absolute path, you can pass in an absolute path to whatever that image is. So you can either do this, or you can just directly and just say man.jpg, jpeg, and I can just say a man. If I come right here, you can see a man is being displayed right here. So even if you don't pass your absolute path right here, it by default just going to come to the public right here, scan over it and look for this image right here. Okay, or you want to pass it, you can do slash dot slash man, or you can say dot slash, you can say dot slash, let me see, dot slash is to go back, slash, you can then say dot slash, I don't know, dot slash, and then say public, then slash man.jpg. I don't know if you can see. Let's see if this is going to work. Okay, I think that is not working. Let me see why it's not working. Okay, let me just see. Again, this is expected to work. Let me see. Okay. Let me just restart. And okay, so that didn't show up. Okay, I think my app is not running correctly. Let me see. It's running now. Oh yeah, okay, so that didn't show up. Okay, so, yeah, so let me just stick back to like this. So this is going to, okay, this is going to display the map, or you can do dot slash, and then it's going to, so I think when I did my double slash, probably it was not going to the right place. But by doing this, it's going to just scan your public folder and display. You can come right here and create extra folder called, let's say, assets. Let me do that, and then let me move this butterfly within my assets right here. So let me just try that to say dots slash dots slash dots slash assets slash as butterfly.jpeg. Let me see. You can see the butterfly is displaying right here. Okay, so when you do a dot in your SRC, by default scans a public folder, and you can then find every other subfolder, as we can see right here. Okay, so that's it. Or yeah, so that's probably it. Now you can actually also get this by using data binding. So this is not property binding, this is just your natural way. So let's use property binding to try to get this. So I'm going to come right here to where is it, to right here, and then have an example. Just say property binding for image. Let me just say image, I don't know, property binding image, I don't know, something like that. Then I can decide to say image. I can say image, let's say URL, like that. That can be your URL, or it can be the location of your image. For me, that's going to be dot slash asset slash butterfly or JPEG. Then I can decide to say image alt. Something I can just say a butterfly or something like that. Fly or something like that. FLY. So if I want to display this using property binding, I'm going to come right here. Let me comment this out. So I'm going to again say image. Instead of me doing SROs, I'm going to wrap this within a square bracket. As you rightly said, wrap that within your square bracket, and right here it is then going to be the image URL like that. So let's do that. Before I do that, let's just see. You can see it's there. If I comment it out and I refresh, you can see it's not there. If I bring it back, you can see it's there. Okay, so that's how to do property binding. Then also you can also, instead of using this, you can get the actual image URL online. So let me just see. Let me just call this image path, right? So we can differentiate them together. And then for auth, you can do like this and just say image auth, which is the image like that. So this is not a property binding way. So let's display the image by use image from the website using image URL. Again, using the property binding alternative, it's also going to be something like this. And then this is going to be, let's say, the image URL from the website. So I'm going to just do that by coming right here to your browser. I'm just going to say, image URL example link. Let me just say image URL link. I just want to get a random link online, and then so let me just go to this lorem picsum, and then this is a random image right here. So let me just copy this right here. This is the URL to the image. Then come right here, then paste it right here as the URL, the image URL. Then that has been referenced right here. If I come right here to my project, you can see, okay, I think it's still trying to run. You can see right here, it has gotten the image from the URL. So if I refresh again, I'm expecting, you can see a different image. If I refresh, you can see this is the image right here, getting from this lorem ipsum kind of stuff. So let me just use this and see the same thing. It's just going to add a width of 30 to it. So okay, I think it's just the same thing, it's not smaller. Okay, good. So yeah, so if you want to, you can actually, what do I even want to say? You can, okay, so I think that's it. So I think that's it. Can I use the property binding alternative, which is this one, or you can use the old traditional way, which is what you have right here. So either of them is perfectly fine. Yeah, see you in the next lecture, which will be talking about event binding. So let's head on to look at event binding. So what is event binding? Event binding are activities, or it's used to listen to a user event such as a click, when they move their mouse, when they perform an action, when you submit a button. Let's say you have a form and the user has filled the form and the user have clicked on submit. What do you want to do? So those activities are what we call events. So can then be grouped as an event binding. Okay, so we're just going to have a simple event binding example where when a user click on a button, it's going to change the status of that template. So let's get to see that. So I'm just going to call this event binding, and I'm going to first of all have a variable called click status, and by default I'm just going to say no, let me just say no click yet. So then when I have a button and a user click on it in the front end or in your template, and then I'm going to call this function called handle click, and when this function is called, I want to change the value of this status right here by saying this dot click status equals to, I'm just going to use say button clicked, then at the current time it was clicked, we're going to use this variable right here to get the current date time by saying new date, then invoke it, and then dot to local date, let's say to local time string. Okay, let's use time string just to get the time, and I'm going to invoke it like so. Okay, so it's very simple. This is going to help us to explain event binding. Okay, I'm going to come to my template right here, and I'm going to have my little template. I'm going to come right here and say event binding like that. So let me have my div as usual, have my styling, which is example, and then just have this kind of dummy stuff right here. Let me just copy all of this, and then this is going to be event binding, and this is going to, what does event binding means is help to respond to user actions or activity. Okay, then the direction is going to be, this time around the direction is a template to a component, which is the direction of flow, and it's also a one-way data binding. So everything we'll be talking has been one-way data binding. So your interpolation, your property binding, your event binding are all one-way binding. But for the event binding, the direction of flow is your template to your component, while the other ones is from component to your template. Okay, so let me just finally have a little bit of example right here where user can, click on a button to do something. So I'm going to have a button right here. I'm just going to call this click me, and here, this is the trick of event binding. So whenever you see something like this, note that we are doing an event binding. Okay, so that's just, so it uses a parenthesis. So when you see a parenthesis within your template, note that we are performing an event binding. When you see a bracket, know we are performing a property binding. And when you see double curly braces, know we are performing interpolation. So for event binding, you use a curly braces right here, parenthesis right here, or and a round bracket. I think this is called round bracket in English, but it's usually called parenthesis. Okay. Yep. So let's do that. And that's going to be, you pass your parenthesis right here. You can pass the activity, which is going to be a click, which means that if a user perform a click on this button, it's going to call this method, which we define right here, called handle click, right? So it's going to call the method called handle click, and you need to, invoke it like that because it's a method. So you need to pass your function invocation. Okay. Now let's head on to display the status, and that's going to be interpolation again by just displaying the current status, which is this click status when the event was clicked. Okay, so let's test this out to see how. So this has been used for click. There are different kind of event activity. We have a hover activity. A user can perform a hover. A user can perform a click, which is what we're doing right here. There are a lot of events a user can perform. Drag, different kind of events, right? So this is basically to pass the event name, and that's all you need to do. So again, let me pull this up to make sure I'm having no significant error, right? And then whenever you have any error, it's going to show you right here. So when you have any error of whatsoever, it's going to be displayed, and by reading over the error, you will know what the problem is. Okay. So, and if I scroll down right here, you can see it's trying to load, right? Which there's no problem. So if you can see, if I click on, for now, the status is no click yet, which is what we are expecting from this status right here. This is coming from this variable right here, click status. So when I click on this button right here, so when I click on this button, what is it going to do? A click event is going to be triggered, and that's going to help call this method called handle click. When I call this method, it's going to change the status of this click right here to button clicked at the current time I clicked it. So let's just see that out. When I click on it, click me, you can see button clicked at this time. If I click on it again, you can see the time is always changing according to the time I click it, right? As I click on it, it has changed, right? So that's how event binding work. This is an example of how event binding work. And with this, we can do any other event that we want to do based on the requirement for our application. So I'm going to stop this right here. And in the next lecture, we're going to look at two-way data binding. So let's look at two-way data binding. So what is two-way data binding? The two-way data binding helps to synchronize data between the component and the template, or between the template and the component. So what that means is that whenever there is a change in the data in either of the template, it's going to be changed or reflected in the component. If there's a change in the component, it's going to be changed or reflected in the template. So that's what two-way data binding is, just to synchronize data between the component and the template. If there's a change in one, it's going to reflect on the other one, and there's a change in the other one, is going to reflect or trigger a change in the first one. So we're going to have a simple two-way binding example, and a common way where this is used is being used in a form. Let's say a user want to submit something, or you have a form and a user is typing his email, the username. As he's typing the data, we are collecting and saving the data at our end, and then the data is also being displayed for the user to see what he or she is typing. So that is what two-way data binding is, and let's get an example. So the first thing for you to do if you want to use two-way data binding is to make use of an import called form module. So scroll up right there in the page or in your component where you want to use two-way data binding, and in the imports right here, you import what we call forms module, forms FRMS, forms module, and that's coming from the Angular forms. If you are surprised where this is coming from, let me show you. So come to your package.json right here, and within your dependency, you can see we have the Angular forms right here. You can see it. So this is where our forms module is coming from, and the forms module, it's what we need to be able to use two-way data binding. Okay, so again, come to your, make sure the form module has been imported right here. So by having this, we can then proceed to implement a two-way data binding. Without doing this, you cannot use a two-way data binding. Okay, now let me just move down here and have a two-way data binding example. So in an interview question, if you're asked what is the dependency for a two-way data binding, you can say it comes from the forms module, which we can see right here, forms module. So that is the dependency we need for two-way data binding. Okay, good. So moving down, I'm just going to have two example by saying username. It's going to store the username that the user is typing in the template, and then let me say user email as well, and it's going to so store the value the user is typing in. So this is a way for us to just test how two-way data binding is. So I'm going to go to the template right here and create a simple form where the user can pass in his username and email, and then as he's typing it in, we are displaying the value to the user, and the value is also being stored at our end. So let us do that. I'm going to come right here, create a div. Before then, let me just have a little bit of comment, move this up and say two-way data binding. Okay, and I'm going to just have a little bit of, okay, let's just leave it that way. Now let me have a div right here, and then right here I'm going to have my class. I'm going to call this example, and I'm just going to, let me just copy everything right here again, just to help to display what exactly we are doing right here. And this is going to be called two-way data binding. And for the use case, this is to synchronize templates with component data, something like that. And the direction is from either component to, let me say, to templates, and then to components. So it's just like that. So this is going to be two-way like that. So you can have an arrow right here, or it can just be anything. Arrow can be both back and front. So I mean, um, this is having an arrow. I just want an arrow that can be both side, not just, okay, this is not working. Right, so I just want arrow to be at both ends. Okay, yep. So this, unfortunately, did not work. Yeah, just want arrow to be at both. But I believe we understand what this is. Okay, yep. So let me head on to have my div, and then call this class demo, and then I'm going to have my input right here, and this is going to be, let me just say, let's say placeholder. Let me just say enter username, and then for me to create a two-way data binding so we can keep an eye on a change right here in the username. I need to use a special term like this, put your double bracket and call it say ng model. So by doing this and then say equal to, and then you get hold of this variable right here called username. So when you do something like this, whenever a user is typing in any value right here, the ng model is going to intercept those value and save it in the user right here. And at the same time, we can also get hold of that value and then also display it right here for the user. So this is how we use two-way data binding by using the ng model. So very, very important. So I may want to display it up by using a p tag, and I can just say hello, and I just can use interpolation to display it by saying username. So with this, we're going to see as we're typing, it's going to be displaying the hello, your name right there. Okay. If we can also have another thing, if the username is not there, I can just say hello guest, something like that. Okay. So let's also do the same thing with another input. This time around is going to be the email. So I'm going to be input, the type is going to be an email, and then I can have my placeholder to say enter email, and then for the two-way data binding, this is supposed to be bracket and this. So I think, yeah, I think I made a mistake right there. So it's supposed to be your bracket and then your parentheses for the two-way data binding, okay? Yeah, so to do that, you do your bracket, your square bracket, and within your square bracket, you do your parentheses, and then you say ng model, and then after, away from it, you say equal to the variable which you want to hold the value you are typing in. And in that case, that's going to be our username, user email, like so. Okay, so that's it. Again, I may want to print this out by saying p and say email. I can just say your email is, and then I can use this to get the email, which is going to be the user email, like so. So again, let's just check to make sure error it's not there. And okay, it's not there. So yep, so let's test this out and scroll down. You can see this is the two-way data binding example. And if I type for now, you can say hello guest because there's no username. If I start typing my username, you can say hello Dennis. For my email, if I start typing my email, let me just say beacon at gmail.com. You can see your email is this. As I'm typing it, it's collecting the value and it's displaying it up right there. Okay. I've just refreshed. So again, if I come to my component and just say, let me just type username right here. Let me just say Sam, and email is going to say, let me just say mary at gmail.com. If I come right here, you can see by default, the username is Sam and the email is Mary, okay? Because I see by default, this was what is coming from the component, right? If I begin to type in something, you can see it's going to, it's going to just add to it. If I remove it, it's going to remove it like that, okay? So this is two-way data binding, and this is how it works. And in the next lecture, we're going to build a small counter project where we can, click on a button to increment, click on a button to decrement, and then click on a button to reset our counter. So this will be done in the next lecture. So the most important thing for you to know is for two-way data binding, you need to add the forms module as your import. And to use that, the two-way data binding, you need to use the ng model, which is a parenthesis wrapped within a square bracket. So see you in the next lecture. Let's head on to have the little counter project. So I'm going to, within the data binding again, want it to be in this class, just something wanting to be in this page, so to say. And I'm going to come to the data binding component right here. I just want to create a very simple counter, which is going to help us to bring everything we've learned together into practice. I'm just going to come right here and say data. Okay, let me just say simple counter project, something like this. And I'm going to first of all have a counter, and by default, I'm going to set it to 0. I'm going to have a function to increment, right? This is going to be an event binding. When the user click on to increment, I'm going to increment by saying this.counter, and then I'm going to double just increase the existing value. Then to decrement as well, I'm going to have decrement. Again, it's a function. When you click on to decrement, I'm just going to say to reduce the value of the counter by saying this the counter minus minus. It's going to reduce the existing value right there. Again, let's have to reset counter. That's going to be a function. Again, this is going to clear everything by setting the value to be 0. Okay. So now let's have the template set up like that. I'm going to come right here in the template, and let me just move down and say simple counter like that. And I'm just going to have this wrapping within a div. I'm going to give it a styling called example and counter. And then I'm going to have a heading. I'm just going to say just display the current count by saying the current count is going to be the count star, which is going to be the variable right here, which this is interpolation we are doing right now. And then I'm going to have a div right here and give it a class called demo. For those who don't really know what this class is, this is a style, a CSS styling stuff. When passing a class, the value is going to execute the styling within the CSS of that given name. So here I'm going to have you know what, I think let me just move this right there. I'm just trying to think. Let me just give this a h2 and give it a name called, let's just say simple counter, and this, let me just make this a h3 a little bit. Okay, and let me have a button right there, and it's going to be, the value is going to be increment. And then let me just copy this. This one is going to be decrement, and this one is going to be to reset that. So for the increment, when this button is clicked, I want to perform an event binding by saying having your parenthesis right here, and the action is a click. The user perform on a click action. What do I want to do? I want to invoke this method right here. I want to call this method called increment. So I'm going to just do right here. I'm going to invoke it, which means when you click on that, this is going to be called. So I want to pass in the class. I'm just going to call it increment. I already have the styling up right there. For the decrement also, again, have your event binding. When a user click on decrement, I want to call this decrement method right here. And again, I have a styling, which are called decrement. The same thing for the reset. When you click on that, the event I want to capture is an on-click event, and I want to call the reset. Let me see what I called it right here. That's called the reset counter. I'll invoke it right here. So that I forgot to invoke this, so make sure you invoke that, and then I have a styling called reset like that. So if I come like this, we can see we have no particular error. So let me try to make a mistake right here so we can see the error. Yeah, so you can see right here, I intentionally made a mistake by not invoking this right? So when I pull in my terminal, we can see is giving us an error right here. I just want us to be able to know how to debug and understand what error is coming from the terminal. So right here, you can see it's telling me that, hey, the error is coming from this right here. You can see it's saying function in event binding, which means that it's an event binding should be invoked, which means that this is the right way to call it, right? It should be invoked, but it was not invoked, okay? And then moving down, it gave us the line, which is number 80. We can see this is number 80 right here, which means this is where the problem is. And it's saying that, hey, this is where what you didn't invoke, and you shall invoke it like this. But this is what you have right here. So this is it, where the problem is, which is saying this is where the problem is right here. And that is it. And then it's telling us now to say this is the template data binding.html, right? This is where the problem is, okay? And this is the template data binding.html, okay? So this is how to read and understand errors that are coming from the Angular. And by doing this, it's going to give us a hint of what to do. And by following the hint right here is to invoke it. Let me follow that hint. Invoke it right here. If I check again, we can see it has been compiled and the error is now gone. So let me just check this out in the browser. Scroll down. You can see our simple counter. If I decrement, it begins to increment, it begins to increment. If I reset, it's clear to 0. If I decrement, it begins to go down. Increment, it begins to go up and up and up and up. Decrement, it begins to come down. And if I reset, it begins to clear. You might want to move forward to do some complex stuff by having a condition to say if you are decrementing and it gets to 0, you should not move further. You don't want a negative value. You can probably do that in this right here and say have an if statement if counter is equal to 0, then, or if counter is, you can say if counter is lesser than 1, okay? I don't know, you can just do your whatever logic you have where to say if is equal to 0, you can say, let's just say break, I don't know, or something, or you can just say return, just return it like that. You don't want to do anything, or you can just probably just say, you can do whatever you want to pass in your logic so that you don't get negative value. So those can just be done just to make things a little bit more fun. But for me, I just want us to show how, data binding works by using event binding, interpolation, two-way data binding, and other kind of stuff. So we're going to leave it up right here. And in the next lecture, we are going to start with the directive. We're going to see how for loops are done. We're going to look at the common module. We're going to be looking at the conditional statement if else. We're going to be looking at a lot of things, and that's going to kick off from the next lecture. So we've pretty done a lot, and we're going to head on to look at directives. Now, if you go to the documentation, let's say angular.dev documentation, you can see there are a whole lot of stuffs right there. Let me go to the docs. And there are a whole lot of stuff to be covered, a lot and lot. So if I come right here and let me just search for directive, let me come right here and search for directives like that. And I'm expecting this to give me a whole bunch of things right there. So I think I'm having a little bit of network directive. If I go to directive, you can see that different kind of directive. We have structural directives, we have attribute directives, we have built-in directive, and all kind of stuff right here. So and see, so there are a lot of stuff right there, and we won't be able to cover everything. So what I'm going to do best is I'm going to pick the ones that would be frequently used in beauty applications. I'm going to cover those ones, okay? So again, what are directives? So directive, they are decorators which are used to add behavior to elements in our templates, or you can say in your DOM. So they are just decorators that help you to add behaviors to elements in your DOM. So example of directive are your conditional statement, which is your if else conditional statement, your loops, your for loop, your switch statement, your while loop. So these are things that can help us to add behavior to our HTML template. So these are what directives are. So I'm going to be looking at conditional statement and then the for loop, so which can help us give an idea on what directives are. Okay, so I'm going to move right here. Let me close everything right here. And we're done with this page right here. Let's go to the directive page and then let's just look at some examples. So before I head on to have example, I already have like a styling for what I want to do right there. So let me just copy this right here. And then I'm just going to keep it up right here in the directive CSS style. Then we're going to head on with explanation. Okay. So now, first of all, I just want us to have an example of how conditional statement work. We're going to be looking at the if statement, the else statement, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to do that in Angular 21 using the latest code, and also how to do this in the older version in case you come across an older code. Okay, so the first thing to do when you want to make a conditional statement, or you want to use the array, the loop, for loop, is to have your common module imported. So in the import right here, I'm going to say common module, which can say is imported from our common right here. Again, that is coming from, go to the package.json, you can see your common right here, which is our common modules, which is where we are bringing it from right here. So if you want to make use of conditional statement like if statement, else, for loop, while loop, these are all coming from the common module, and you must import the common module like so. Okay, so moving down within this class right here, I'm just going to say conditional statement, I don't know, example or something like that. I'm just want to have some variables down called is logged in. I just want to be able to, use the directive to do something if the is logged in is true. And I just want to say user role, just a very simple example. I just got this admin so we can see how conditional statement can be written using directive. Then I'm just going to have a method right here said toggle login. This is going to help me change the value of this is logged in to true or false. So to toggle that, I'm just going to say this dot is logged in equals to not this dot is logged in. So if this value is true, when I toggle this, is going to turn into false. If it's false, it's going to turn into true. So based on the value right here, we are then going to conditionally display something in our template. So that's what directive is. They are decorators that help us to change the behavior of our element in our template. So let me go to my HTML template right here, and let's just have a very simple stuff. Okay, I'm going to just remove everything, have a div, give this a styling called container, and have my heading. Let me just call this Angular Directives example. Let me just say simple example. And there are other complex directives like the select and all of that, as we can see, as we saw right here. There are other complex directives, like let's say you want to say select from this kind of code, and you want to do some other complex stuff right there, or you want to use a full class decorator and all of that. So the other ones, I'm just going to stick with the most common ones, which will be coming across a lot on our code, or which we'll be needing to write our code. Okay. Yep. So here I'm going to have my div. Before I do that, let me have a comment right here and say conditional statement, by using the if syntax like that. Okay. So again, right here, let me give this a class. I'll just call it section. And I'm going to have a h2 right here by saying, let's say the new conditional statements syntax, something like that. We have all the new one and the older one. I'm going to be treating all of them right here in this course. So first of all, I'm just going to have my button up right here, which is going to be called Togo log in state. And right here, I want to have a property binding called an event binding called click. When you click on that, I want to call the Togo login method, which is Togo login like that. When you click on this, it's going to set the login to, you're going to change the value of this login right here. Okay, now moving down, I want to use a conditional statement. If the login is true, I want to display a certain template. If the login is false, I want to display another template. So that exactly of how you can use conditional statements or an if directive. Okay, so I'm going to come right here to say at if, very simple, and I'm going to say, you can give it a space anyhow. I'm going to say that it is logged in, which is this is login variable right here. So if this variable is true, then within this code block right here, I want to do something, create a div. I want to display this right here. Else, let me have my at else, say at else, then do something right here. Okay. So let me just say if login, let's just have my h1 and say I am logged in. Let me just have my h2 and say I am logged out. Just an example for us to see how it works. So again, I can say I'm having errors right here because my Togo logged in. You can say I didn't invoke it right here, so I have to invoke it by coming right here and say invoke this like that. We can see my code is working correctly. So I'm going to come right here, go to the directive example. You can see the design. If I click toggle login state, if it's now false, you can see I am logged out. I toggle it again, I am logged in. Toggle it again, I am logged out. Toggle it again, I am logged in. So this is an example of how directive work. This is the at if directive. It's a conditional statement for us to do something if this condition is true. So this is how a conditional statement works using the new syntax. So I'm just going to, write this, have like a more better view by just doing something like this. Say welcome back. And then I'm just going to say you are logged in, something like this, right? And then I can just decide to move down right here. I can decide to then display the user role again by just saying a p right here and say user role is going to be, just display the user role right here. Okay, so just something like this, very, very, fancy. As if I'm not logged in, that means I'm logged out. So before I do that, let me just pass in my style right here, call it success boss. Okay, as if I'm not logged in, let me pass in my style, say, let me just say error boss. I don't know. If I'm not logged in, I'm just going to say, please log in to continue, something like this. And I can come right here and just put in the cancel like that. Okay, so again, pull up to make sure everything is working fine. I'm going to, if you want to format this right here, just click on Command Option Shift F. is going to, format a document, or I click on that and you're going to see, where is it? You're just going to see format document right here. Just click on that. Let's say this was here before. When I type that, if I just right click and click format document, you can see it has, been adjusted. So just some shortcuts I use to make my development faster. Okay, again, let's test this out again. We can see if I toggle this, please log into continuing. This has been, my login state has been, difficult. I said difficult, has, not been logged in. If I toggle it again, you can say, welcome back, you are logged in, user role is admin. Okay, so this is how the if directive works. And in the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to use the older syntax of the older syntax of the conditional statement. So see you in the next lecture. Now, before I show you how to use the older syntax, let me just quickly show how to use multiple conditions. So I'm just going to continue right here and say at if, again, let's say if the user role is, let's say if it's admin, right? Then I'm just going to do something, render this right here. And then I'm just going to say admin access, and then I can say you can delete and edit anything, something like that. Then let me say else if, again, there's something like called else if at else, right? Else if, right? So these are multiple conditional statements. Else if the user role is, let's say, something like editor or something different, I can decide to say, let me have my div right here, and then just have my div right there. I'm just going to say editor access. You can only edit, something like that. Then if these two conditions are not met, I can just say at else. Then I'm just going to say viewer. Just no. So just say viewer. Then okay, let me say viewer access and say you can only view content. Something like this, right? And for this, I can decide to pass in some budget eyes like that. And just, make this a little bit weird. Okay. Now, let me just add some styling right here to make the display a little bit fancier. It's going to be called viewer box. And this one was supposed going to be called editor box. I'm not really sure if that's what it is, but I'll check again. And this is going to be called admin box. So let's just check again to be sure our code is running correctly. I go to my browser, you can see viewer access, you can only view content. Why is that viewer access? I think I was an admin. No. Okay. Let me see if, okay, I didn't spell the admin correctly. ADMIN. Okay, admin was spelled correctly now. So you can see admin access, you can delete and edit anything. If I come right here to change this to editor, you can see right here, editor access, you can only edit. If I change it, let's say I decide to call this user, you can see viewer access, you can only view content, okay? So let me just keep this as editor like that, okay? So that's cool. And yep, so that's just it to have multiple. Let me just add comment here to say at if with multiple condition. You can make it more complex by saying if this is this, and just concatenate a lot of statement right there. Okay, now let's take a look at the older syntax. I'm just going to move right down here. And let me just have a div right here, class. I'm not going to call this an older, I'm not going to call it an older syntax because it's still primarily used up to date. Like it's mostly used when you come across Angular code. So I'm just going to call this, let me just call this ng if. It's basically called the classical conditional statement. Classical conditional syntax or statement, anyone. Okay, so either of them, they do the same thing. So I just want to do the same thing right here. But this time around, I want to use the classical conditional syntax, which is the ng if like so. Okay, so the same way I need to have this button up right here. Let me have that. So it'll be a little bit faster. And then I'm going to, first of all, to do that, I'm going to have a div right here. I will take this div to use the classical syntax for conditional statement. I'm going to say within the div right here, within the first tag of the opening tag of that div, I'm going to say ng if, give it a space right there, which means star ng if, then equal to, then you can pass in your logic by saying if is logged in. If this login is true, then this div will be rendered. If it's not true, then this div will not be rendered. Okay, so that's the classical way. The older way is to just have your at if and then put your bracket, more like a code kind of stuff. While this one is more like a classical way, more like the Angular way of doing stuff, right? But this is the new one, and this is more like the classical one. Okay, so then here I can decide to pass in my styling, success bus, stuff like that. So let me just copy what I have right here. So if the most important thing is for us to take note of this right here. Okay, so if this is logged in, this will be displayed. If this is not logged in, then this will not be displayed. Okay, so that's it. Then also okay, if this is not logged in, I want to display another thing. So for example, S, if it's not logged in, I want to display this one right here. Okay, so I need to do that by coming right here to say star ng if equals to not is logged in. This negation means that if this is false, then this entire div will be displayed. If it's true, this one will be displayed. If it's false, this one will be displayed. Okay, so this is more of a classical way. The syntax looks more easier, or not easier, it looks more well arranged and more cool compared to the new, directive syntax. All right, so both of them work to virtually the same thing. So I'm just going to come right here and say classical syntax. Let me just say for conditional statements. That is star ng if, something like that. Okay, good. So if I come right here, you can see this is the classical syntax right here. And if I toggle this, you can see the same thing. If I toggle this, so you can see it does the same thing, but just that the syntax are different. This is using the classical syntax, and this is using the new syntax right there. So that is it. So I can also move on to, do this same thing right here. So let me just do that, copy this right here, paste it, and copy this second one right here. What am I doing? Paste it and copy this third one right here, paste it. So the only thing I need to do is to then, within the opening of each of the div, I'm going to have my logical statement using the classical syntax. So for this one, I'm going to say star ng if, that should be ng if, right, equal to, so if I can say the user role triple equal to admin, like that, then it's going to display this one right here. For this other one, I'm going to say star ng if equal to the user role is equal to editor. It's going to display this editor right here. While the last one, I'm going to say star ng if equal to, if the user role is not equal to admin, right? And user role is not equal to editor, then display this one right here. You can see one other little change right here. You can see when I say this started with a double quotation, but when I say equal to the value, I'm putting it within a single quotation right here. So let me do that, putting it within a single quotation. So you can see the value right here is within a single quotation, while the parent is within a double quotation. So if the parent is within a single quotation, then the value should be within a double quotation. That's going to help us differentiate, to help you prevent error throwing up on your code, right? Good. So same thing for this one. This is going to be a single quote because the parent is a double quote. This one is going to be a single quote as well. So this is the variable, this is the value, this is the variable, this is the value. Okay. So just pull this up to be sure you do not have problem. If I try to remove a quote right here, you can see it's going to throw me an error that says, hey, you can see this is where your problem is. You need to put in a single quote right here. So that just, how the terminal suggests if your code has a problem or if it doesn't. So let's test this out. You can see if I toggle this like that, editor is an editor. So if I come right here and change this to, let's say admin, I come right here, you can see admin. If I change this to, like, let's say a user, I come right here, you can see viewer, you can, stuff like that. So this is the Angular directive using the newer syntax. Where is it? The newer syntax and then the classical syntax. So our directive is done. We're going to head on to have our looping where we can use the for loop and then just try to display arrays of items on our page. So see you in the next lecture. Now let's proceed to look at the for loop directive. So I'm going to come to my component right here again. Make sure you have the common module right here. I'm moving down. I'm going to just have some arrays which will be used for explaining the for loop. So we just want to have an array of items. I want to display this item in our template. So I'm going to say arrays for loop directive. I don't know. Okay. Something like this. We're going to call this products. In a real application, let's say we have a product from the DB and want to display them in our product page. This is how it's done. So let's say we have our product right here, and each our product has an object of like the ID, the name, let's say laptop, and then it has the price, let's say 999, and then it has in stock. We don't know if the product is still in stock or not. So for this, let me just call this true. I'm just going to copy and paste this and have different kind of items right there. And then I want to have the ID is going to be like 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I can just have random number for the price. Let's say 75. Let's just say 299. And this can just be anything. Okay, in stock, this will be true. Let's say true. This, let's just say false. And then let's just cut this false like that. Then the items, this can be mouse, this can be, let's say, keyboard, and this can be, I don't know, let's say monitor, and this can be, let's say, headphone, just like, gadgets. Okay, then I'm just going to move down to have some methods, just to add a product and to remove a product. We just want to, just make it a little bit fun. So this is going to be to add a product, and then I'm just going to say, have a little logic right here and say new ID, That's going to be this dot product dot length, then plus 1. So which means that if the total product is 5, the new ID is going to be 6. If it's already 6, it's going to be 7. It's just going to have to add 1 to the existing IDs right there. Okay. Yep. Then I'm just going to say this dot products dot push. It's an array. We want to add item to the end. And then I'm just going to build in my object to add to it, which is the ID to be the new ID. Command, the name is going to be, let's just say, let me use a backtick right here and say product, and then I'm just going to pass in the new ID as the new name right there. You don't really know what to pass in right there. And then I can say price is going to be, let me just say math.floor, and then that's going to be math.random, and then I'm just going to say times 500, and then I'm just creating a random price for each item, right? Then it's in stock. Let me just make it true. I don't want to do any complex thing right there. Okay, this is going to be used to add a product to a stock, and we also have to remove product also. And then this is going to have the ID number, and then it's going to be this dot product. That's going to be this dot product dot filter. I'm not really expecting to be doing this much stuff. It's really going to be, hectic, but the aim was just to show how, directive work and not just a logical thing. So let's just leave this right here. Okay, this is just to, filter the last item. I mean, when I say I want to remove this product right here, if I pass in the ID of that product, it's going to remove that product from the existing arrays. That's what this is going to do, right? It's expecting the ID, which is the product ID right here. So let's just keep it like that. Now in my HTML template, let me have to, display. Let me just have the for loop directive. So I'm going to move down right here, have a little bit of comment. Let me move this up and say for loop directive. Again, as I rightly said, there are other directives out there. I just want to keep it very simple so we understand the concept. Okay, the idea is to understand the basic, and then we can head on to start building complex stuff. So I'm just going to say history, and I'm just going to call this new loop syntax, and that's going to be a P. I'm just going to say strong like this, say use, I don't know. I'm just going to say, let's say loop through arrays and display items using the new syntax, something like that. Okay. Now move it down, I'm just going to have a button to add a new product. I'm just going to call this add new product like that. And this is going to be an event binding, and the event I want to listen to is a click, CLICK. So if the button is clicked, I want to say add product like that, which is going to call this add product function. Is this one, and I'm going to just, when you click on that, it's going to call that to add a new dummy product. Okay, now let me also just display the total products by saying product list, I don't know, is, let me just say, let's see, use the product dot length. Where is it? That should be products. Where is it? Let me come right here. That should be products right here. products dot length, get the total length, and then I'm just going to say items like that. Okay. I don't really think I need that. Let me get it total. So this is going to be the product. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. So now let's head on to the main, you know, task for the day is to use for loop to get all the products. So by doing that, we're going to say add for, very simple, and then we're going to say the product of products, right? So this is the products right here. These products right here. When you say product of products, you're going to take each of the value of these products to be products, right? The product is an array of items. Each of these is going to be saved or is going to be referred to as a product, okay? Then I'm just going to, first of all, do that like this. I can have multiple statements, and then I'm just going to say track product.id. So that's going to be the unique identifier right there, okay? Then I'm just going to say, have my div to display all the data. So I'm going to have my span right here, and then this is going to display the product name by saying product.name, right? And they also have a span to display the product price, right? And then also have a span to, display if it is in stock or not. So again, we can, within this span right here, we can have a conditional statement to display if it's in stock, we'll say in stock. If it's not, we'll say it's not in stock. So which means that if in stock is true, I want to say display in stock as a test. If in stock is false, I want to display not in stock or out of stock. So those can also be done by coming right here and using the if directive by saying if product dot in stock, which is this in stock right here. If this product in stock is true, then I want to do something. I want to display. You can decide to wrap this within a span and say, in stock. You can decide to do what you want by comment this and say in stock. And then you can then say else if it's not in stock. At else, don't forget to add your at else. Then you can decide to say out of stock by just copying this and saying, let me just have my console and say out of stock. Okay, so something like this. Again, put this down to make sure your code is running properly. If I come right here, you can see these are all the product lists be displayed right here. If I click add new product, new one has been added, new one has been added, and they are both in stock. So again, I can proceed to add some of the new styling right here. So to make things more fancy. So let me check if I can do that quickly as my time is fast spent. So let me just do that right now. Within this div, I can add this styling right here. And the other one, this span, I can have the class here is going to be called info. I think, is that info? Okay. It's going to be called name, product name, right? It's going to be called price, and this other one is going to be called product stock. Or I don't know why I call it. It's going to be called something like that. So if I come right here, you can see the products, they are right there, right? It's been displayed properly and correctly, right? Then also I can have a button so I can trigger to remove a product. So that can be done by, coming right here and, having that product to, having to remove a product. So I'm just going to come right here. And after this span, I'm just going to have a button, and that's going to be called to remove. And I'm going to trigger a click event. And then I'm going to call the method to remove a product. I'm going to pass in the product ID I want to remove. To call it remove product, I'm going to pass in the product ID by saying product.id. So again, make sure that is within this for loop so we can get hold of the product ID like so, right? So if I come right here, you can see there's a body remove. If I click on that, it has removed it. If I click on this, it has removed. Click on this, you can see it has been removed. Refresh again. Click on this, it has been removed, removed. Okay, now when all the product has been removed, if it is empty, I want us to show no products. Okay, so let's look at the empty directive. So right here, I can come right here and say at empty empty. So this is the empty directive. So if there's no product, I come right here and say no products available. I'm just going to say click add new products, something like that, to create a new one, something like this. And this, I can have my class name to say error box, something like this, right? So this is the empty tag, empty directive. So let me test that out. And you can see new product available. Let me refresh again. These are all the products. I can add new one has been added. I can remove. You can see no product available. Click the new to create a new one, and then product has been added. So this is how to use directives, the for loop directive, using the new syntax. And in the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to write this using the classical syntax. So see you in the next lecture. So let's do the same thing using the classical syntax. So I'm just going to come right down right here and say, let me see where this starts. I'm just going to say directive for loop using classical syntax. Okay. So we want to do the same thing, which is what we have right here, but this time around using the classical syntax. So I'm going to, first of all, have my div. Again, class is going to be section, as we saw earlier. Then I'm going to have my h2. You know what? Let me just copy what we have right here down. Copy everything right here. Down, first of all. And then this is going to be called classical syntax loop. Like that, right? Loop example, something like that. Now for this is going to be, say, loop through arrays and display item using the classical syntax example. Okay, like that. And this is going to remain as it is. Okay, so leave that right there. Now move down. Product list, let's just display the length or the of that. Now moving down right here, I'm just going to say have my div right here. So we want to do this empty right here, which means that if there's no product, display this. So I'm just going to copy this right here. Have that. So instead of using the at empty right here, I'm going to be using the classical syntax by doing at ng if, right? So if the products, let's not forget dot length, the product of length equal to triple equal to 0, then let's say no product available. Okay, good. Then if the product dot length is not equal to 0, which means if there's a product, let's display the product using the classical syntax. So again, that's going to be star ng4. That's going to be the, ng4 is going to be the way it's done using the classical syntax. The other one you do at 4, but for this one will be ng4. Here we're going to say let product of products. So okay, each of the product in the products is going to be held right here as a product. And then within this, I'm going to have my div. We know what to do next. And then I'm just going to give it a class name. I think that was called product info. I don't know. Let me just check. That was product card. Okay. Let me just add another div to give another conditional statement. So let me just say, for each of these, I'm just going to say, let me say, okay, at ng if, let's just, again, if products dot length is greater than 0, which means if there's a product, then we can proceed to display what we have in this div right here. So right here, I can give this a class name called product dash card, something like that. Okay. Now, if the length of the product is greater than 0, then let's display these products right here by saying class name product dash info. And within this, I'm going to have my span to display the product name. Then I can give this a styling called product dash name, and then the value is going to be like this, right? Which is going to be the product dot name, like so. Okay, like that. Okay, let me just copy this so we can display other data like the product price. And the product price, the other one is to check if it's in stock. So this is going to be product stock, and right here I can come right here and say within this I can just have another span to say star ng if the product, let's first of all say if the product, right, which is the individual product now, dot in stock. If the in stock data is true, let me get the in stock data right here. If the in stock data is true, if it's in stock, then display this entire span right here by coming right here and say, let me just do this right here and say in stock. S, if it's not there, I'm going to copy this again. I'm going to say if not product in stock, which means that it is not in stock, this is going to be called out of stock. So this is how to use the classical syntax. And then moving down, I can have this button right here. So, remove a product that should be within this div right here. And then you can just, pass it down here. Let me see, after this one, you can just pass it down here. Remove a product, and then you pass in the product ID. Okay. So again, just make sure you have no major error. If I move down right here, where you see this was the first one, the new loop syntax, and this is the classical syntax like that. So if I click add products, you can see it was added product 6, add another one, product 7, remove, it was removed. It can remove all of them right now. And now I'm saying no product available, click here to add. Okay, so this is it. And this is the difference between using the new syntax and the classical syntax. So for this one, let me just put in an example here for the classical syntax so we can get to see. Classical syntax example, let me just say, come right here and say ng4 so we can get to see, what the classical syntax is. Which you can, this one right here, right? Yeah, so let me just add a dash. I don't know if I should do that. I think, yeah, let me add a dash. I think I should need some styling for this H3. Let me see if I should need the H2. I think let me just make it H2. Let me make it H2. I believe I have some H2 styling. Let me hear this H2. H2. Okay, so let's check again. Yep, you can see the styling is now a little bit better. Okay, so that's it for directive. There are a lot of directives to cover, but these are the major ones that you'll be coming across on when you are getting your product from your back end, or you get a data for your back end and will display the data in the UI for users to see. This is basically how it's done. You can either use the directive way or you can use this new syntax like so. So that's it for this, and I'm going to catch you in the next lecture. We are going to head on to look at the life cycle of a component. So all components have a life cycle. So the component life cycle are the series of phases a component instance passes through from the time it is created to the time it is destroyed. So let's say I am currently in the home page, which means I'm in the home page component, and I move to the about page, then the about page component will be rendered. So as long as I am in the about page, there are series of lifecycle methods that component will pass through from the time I enter that component, in this case the about page, till the time I navigate from that component. Okay, so this we're going to be looking at these different methods. So Angular manages this process by by creating an object of that component, by rendering that component to the view so I can see it, by checking for data change, then removing that component when I am no longer in need of it. So these are what we call component lifecycle. So let's just go to the documentation and then get to see the lifecycle method. So right here, I'm in the Angular official documentation, which is angular.dev. And at the top right here, I'm just going to search for life cycle, something like this. And we can see, let me do that again. Let me just type it. When you type life cycle, you're going to see we have the router life cycle and then the component life cycle. So our focus is on the component life cycle. You want to click on the component life cycle right here. You can see it's going to give us a tip of what it is, what component life cycle is. And then moving down, we're going to see the summary. And these are the phases a component can exist at. We can see we have the creation phase, and the method that is called when a component is in the creation phase is the constructor for that method, for that component, which we are going to be looking, right? This is a summary of what it is. The constructor instantiate the component, which means it creates an instance of that component. For those of us who are used to object-oriented programming, we understand that the constructor is used to create an object from a class or to create an instance of a class. So a component can be in the creation state and the method needed is a constructor. A component can also be in the change state, and when it is in that state, the ng on init method is called. So this method is run only once after the component has been initialized and all the component input are set. So I'm going to be looking at the ng on init. Is a very powerful method which we'll be using and you're going to be coming across most of the time. So in a situation whereby you are building your application and you want to, let's say, make API call to get your data and passes it down when the component is ready, the ng on init is the method that you use, and within this method right here, it's where you write your logic, to get your data and display when the component has been initialized. So the ng on init is called when the component has been initialized. Then we also have some other detection phase like the ng on change, the ng do check, ng after content init, etc. You most likely will not be needing these right here. You won't be using them most of the time. Then we also have, the rendering phase, like after event rendered. Then we also have the destruction phase, which is ng on destroyed, right? Now, these components right here, these phases, you don't really need to call them, right? They are called on the hood. That's why when we saw the project we've worked on, if you look at what we'll be doing, you can see I didn't call any of those methods. I didn't call any of those phases in any of my project because they are being managed under the hood. So we don't necessarily need to call them. They are being managed under the hood. When I move from one page to another, the ng on destroy is called under the hood. So I don't need to call that on my own. So these are being managed by Angular under the hood. So in a case where we want to do something, we can call this method and do what we want to do, right? So that's the essence of learning them, so we can get to see, how to pass in or do some certain things when the component is each of these states. Most times, let's say the component is in the distress state, you may want to, let's say, you remove some data. So that means you are going to call this method and write your logic. If the component has been initialized, you may want to set some variable. So you want to do that, that means you have to call this method and do that. In a situation where you don't really have any specific thing to do at any phase, you don't need to call them, just as we did right here. We're not calling any of them because we don't really have anything to do with that phase. So that's the component lifecycle, and we're going to move in to see some example on how to use them and how they work. So let's get an example to see how this works. I'm going to come to my Visual Studio right here. I'm going to just create a new component. So ng generate CMIS component. I'm just going to call this lifecycle like that. So just to give an example of how it can be used. So that has been created. And if I come right here, I'm going to see there's a new component created for me down called lifecycle right here. And I'm going to register that in my route so we can, view the template. So I'm going to come right here and say, let me just copy this. Let me just say lifecycle, and that's going to be life cycle, and that's been imported right here. So if I go to the life cycle route, like let me run my app, ng save. If I go to the slash life cycle, let's say localhost starts 4200 slash life cycle, you can see this is life cycle, component right there. So now let's just take a look and do some stuff right there. So I'm just going to open the lifecycle component right here. Let me close every other thing. And then we're just going to first of all look at the constructor, the ng on init. Let me pull them up again right here. We're going to be looking at the constructor, ng on init, the ng on change, the destroy, just the major ones that you most likely come across in a project or that you will be needing in a project. So these other ones, you don't need them there. You don't really need them. Most of the time, you won't have to need them. Okay. So now, the first thing for us to do, if you are looking at older Angular projects, you're going to see that they will implement them by coming right here to say implement. You can say implement on init like that. That's the ones you want to use. If you want to use on destroy, you implement on destroy. If you want to use on change, you implement on change like that. And moving down like this, you can then say you have your constructor, then you can say you have ng on init like that. You can say you have ng on change. You can say you have ng on destroy like that. So these are the lifecycle state methods. So whatever you want to do when the component is initialized, you can do them right here. Whenever you want to do when the constructor has created your component, you can do them right here. Whenever you want to do when there's a change, when the on-change is called, you can do it here. Whatever you want to do when the component is being destroyed, you can do them right here. Now, this is basically what you're going to be seeing for other projects. So for a more modern project like Angular 21, which we are in, you don't need to implement these ones right here. Just get rid of this. You don't need to, implement. You don't need to import them or implement them. By default, once you call the methods right here, it's automatically handled and be called at the background. So you don't need to, do the implement stuff right here. You don't need that, right? So, okay, I just want to show you so when you get to see something like that, you know they are basically doing the same thing. But you need to also call this method if you want to use them. If you don't want to use them, you can get rid of them. If you want to use them, you can call them. So let's just first of all have our some data right here. We're going to be creating a simple counter, and then we're just going to be looking at different changes that will be made when when each of these phases or life cycle are called. First of all, we're going to recreate the simple counter again. I'm just going to called the data properties, and then that's going to be a counter, and it's a number, and then by default, let's just keep it at 0. And then I'm just going to have something like log messages. So what I want to do here is I want to be able to, whenever each of these phases is called, I want to add a log and display it so we can get to see which of the phases was called, which of the life cycle has been called. So that's what I want to do. That's going to help us to know which of this life cycle has been called. Okay. I have a log message to save all the log for each of the life cycle. And this is going to be a string. And by default, I'm going to initialize it with an empty string like that. So within the constructor, what I want to do, I'm just going to say this dot log messages. I'm just going to do dot on shift, which means I want to add an item, right? And I'm just going to say constructor, so we can get to see, okay, this is coming from the constructor. I'm just going to say constructor component, or you created, or you can say phase, created or called. Okay, let me just say constructor. Okay, say constructor phase called. I mean, this method has been called. Just say this method has been called, right? Okay, so what are most of the things you do in the constructor? So the constructor for a larger project, it's where you inject your dependency. Let's say you have an API service elsewhere, or you have your services elsewhere, and you want to use them in a component. The constructor is where is where you inject the service into. Is where you make register those, where you bring those services down to your application. So let's say I have an API to make API calls elsewhere, and I want to use that in this component right here. The constructor is where I'm going to initialize those services when the constructor is set. Okay, so that's it. So again, the constructor, let me go, it runs when an Angular instantiate the component, right? So immediately the component has been instantiated, I just want to register those services. I just want to create an instance of them. So that is usually done in the constructor. Okay, good. Then for the ng underneath, this is usually called once during component initialization. So let me even add a comment right here so you guys can see when you are viewing the code. I'll say this is called when component is created. So the constructor is called when the component is created. The ng underneath is called once, only once during component initialization. So an instance where the ng on it can be used is, let's say one will get the current login user. Let's say this is a profile page, and immediately I go to my profile page, I want to get the login user. So that implementation will be done in the ng init, because this method will be called when the component has been initialized. And immediately my profile page has been initialized, I want to get the current login user so I can display the username, something like that scenario. So that's when I will call this method and then have my implementation right here. Okay. So in the meantime, let me just show you guys, keep a track of where this has been called by saying this does log message dot on shift. It means that it's going to add this to the top of the list right here. And then I'm just going to say this method was called. This method, I'm just going to say ng on it is called like that, and I can just say current counter is, let me just access this using a variable to be this dot counter. Yeah. So I mean, so in my template, when I'm getting this, I just want to know which of these phases has been called. So that's the essence of doing this. So for the ng on change, this is basically triggered when okay, let me just add comment right here. So before then, let's go to the documentation. ng on change, you can see it runs every time a component input have changed. So let's say you have a parent and a child component, and a data is being passed from the parent to the child component. The ng on change will be called when the at input is changed. Okay, so that's what this does, right? So let me just add a comment here called when the at input properties is called. Most of the time, you don't really need to do anything with this. It's just going to be automatically handled on its own. So again, let me say this.log dot on shift and say this method and say, I don't know, let me just say phase or something like that. Okay. Now for the ng on this thread, again, this is very straightforward. The documentation says it runs once before the component is destroyed. So before your component is destroyed, the ng on destroyed is called. So let's say I am on this component and I want to move away from the component to a different component. By leaving that component, which means that component is no longer in use, so which means the component will be destroyed. And this method will be called under the hood. So I'm just going to say call this called before a component is destroyed. So most of the time, what we do right here is to, let's say you are working on subscription where you subscribe to events in other components. So when you want to destroy a component, you have to unsubscribe from those events. So those are basically things you will be doing in the undestroy method right here. So again, let's just say this dot log message dot unshift, and as usual, I'm just going to say undestroyed has been called phase or life cycle. Okay. Yep. So again, let's just have some other methods so we can, be used to, perform a simple operation. So we want to just have a simple counter where we can increment, decrement, and stuff like that. So I think this video is a little bit getting long. So I'm just going to stop here and we're going to continue in the next lecture. So let me head on to have just my method to count and then have my template so we can just print the logs out. So I'm just going to have a method called increment. Let's just increment counter just as we did before. And this is going to be this dot counter plus plus, and I'm just going to add this to the log, this dot log message dot on shift. I'm going to add it to the top. I'm just going to say counter, I don't know, just say counter. Let me use a backtick so I can say counter. Just say counter. Let me just, do something like this. This dot counter. I'm just going to print the current counter. Let me just say current counts. Current counter is something like that. So we also have the same thing to decrement. I'm just going to copy that and just say decrement counter, and then this is going to be minus like that. And then let me also have to clear the logs, to clear everything in the log, and then going to be this dot log message is going to be turning to be empty, and then this dot log message dot on shift, and then I'm just going to just say logs cleared. Just going to add this to the new log like so. Okay, so that's it. Let me have my template up right here so we can just display and get to see. Right, so before then I need to quickly have my styling. Again, that's going to be in the shared code, so you can just go over there, get hold of the styling, and then make use of it. So let's have the template written together. So this is going to be div, and I'm just going to call this container, something like that. I'm going to have a h1 to say Angular lifecycle hook, something like this. And then I'm just going to have a P to say, tracking component view in real time, just stuff like that. Then I'm going to have my div like so, and then give it a class name of card. And then let me just have a h2 to say try these actions, and then have another div right there to just, where I can click on the button to increment and decrement. So first of all, let's just say control group. Let me give that styling, and then I'm going to have a label right there, and then just have a button to decrement. This is going to be a minus, and the other one is going to be plus, and this is going to have an event binding, which is a click. When you click on this button, you want to do something, you want to call the decrement counter, this one right here. And this other one, when you click on this other one, you want to hit or call the increment counter like this. Okay, so that's just it, very simple. Then at the middle, want to display the counter by just saying span, and then using interpolation to display the counter. That should be a small letter counter, and I can give it a little class, call it counter. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. So let me just have a little bit of button down to clear all my logs by saying div, and then button is going to be called clear logs. So when I call it, when there's a user click on it, I want to call this method to clear all my log and remove all the counts and remove everything like so. I'm just going to add a little bit of class right there called control group like so. Okay, now moving down, I want to display the logs right there. So I'm just going to have a div and just have a h2 called lifecycle hook, something like that. We just want to display the log so you guys can see which of the lifecycle we are at, and then just to also see the log. So again, this is going to have a div and a div again, and then let me just have a div right here, just divs. Okay, and this first one I just want to have, I want to be using just want to also use the classical syntax. Before then, let me have a styling right here called log container, and this other div, I'm just going to have a class called log entry, and then I'm going to be using the classical statement by using the ng-for. And before you do this, you remember you need to add the common module. So let me just write it out first. I'm just going to say let log of log messages, right? So we're basically using the classical loop to loop over this log message and display each of the log right there. So right here, use the interpolation to get the log, which is this one. Again, remember before you use the ng-for, you need to use, if you're using the classical syntax, you need to use, or any of the syntax you want to use, you need to use, bring in the common module like that. Very important. If you're using whether your new syntax or the classical syntax, you need to bring in your common module. Okay, now moving down this other div right here, I want to also display, use my ng-if, say if log messages. So if there are no log message, by saying if log message dot length, if it's 0, if there are no log message, then I'm just going to display something, say no log yet, something like that. Then try the button above or something like that. Then I'm just going to give this a styling by saying class to be no log like that. Then I think that's all we need to do. Then moving down, I just want to have a dummy, reference that is just going to show you, so that when you are on the page, it's just going to show you the different, the most used lifecycle method, so you can just get to see what they are. So I'm just going to do that right here below, and then just have it right there, just quick reference. Okay, so put this up. Okay, so I'm having error right here, increment counter like this, it's not okay. Let me just see what I'm doing. Increment count, I'm not invoking it, so I have to invoke it. Also invoke this one. So again, let me check my log. My log is okay. So let's just test that out. Right here you can see this is it, right? It's kind of a little bit fancy. I can add the lifecycle to my Navbar so you guys can access it directly from there. So go to the Navbar right here, the template, and just add a new link right here. Call it lifecycle. And the part is going to be life cycle, life CYCLE. So that's cool. So you can see right now, if I click directive, it goes there. If I click lifecycle right here, it comes to the lifecycle page. So currently, if you are on this page, you're going to see these are the logs currently. This is the ng on it. You can see the constructor was first called, right? That was first called, which means that this log was first added to the log. After the constructor was called, the ng on init was called. You can see it right here. It's added to the log. It was unshifted, which means it was added to the top, right? Now, if I click on this plus right here, you can see counter is these logs are being added. That's to show that the constructor was no longer called and the ng on init was no longer called. So which means that these two methods right here are only called once. The constructor is to create the component or to set it, while the ng on init is to, is called when the component is initialized. So this is just for us to show, which of the component is called. Now, if we won't be able to print, values from the ng on destroyed, because whenever I move from this component to another one and it is destroyed, I'm no longer on that component, so I will not be able to get to see the logs right there, right? So if I come back again, the component has remounted and we can now see these ones right here. Okay. So if I leave now, the component has been destroyed and that logs, I won't be able to see because I've left the component. Okay. So that's just it. I just wanted to show you guys. Then for this other one, the ng on change again, this is not calling because the at input property is not called. So anytime the at input property is called, then this will then be triggered. Okay, so that's just for us to show the most used component lifecycle and to understand how they works. So by this, we should be able to answer interviews regarding component lifecycle on what the constructor do, what the ng on init do, what the on destroy do, etc. So that is it. Now down on the template, I added a quick reference right here so you can get to see what the constructor does. You can see it's run when the component is created. The ng on init is run only once. So when the component is initialized, the ng on change runs every time an input data changes, and the ng on destroyed runs when the component is destroyed. So this is just a quick reference for us so we can prepare ahead for interviews and other Angular questions like that. So that is how the component lifecycle work, and I'm going to see you in the next lecture. Let's head on to run this session by having our home page. So this one will do. It's just going to be a static landing page, something like this, where you can, just like a landing page for an e-commerce platform, want to be able to have this hero page, want to be able to display our categories right here, want to display some best-selling products from right here, and then have something like this, and then just some reviews right here. So this is what I want to do, and we're just going to head on straight to have it up. So I'm going to come to my Visual Studio right here, and I'm just going to close this up right here. And we already have our home page because we created the component some lectures back. So this is our home page, and currently, let me run this app. Let's see. ng-serve. If I come right here and go to slash home, you can see this is our home page. There's really nothing right there. Okay, these are other pages and this is our home page. So let's have this beautiful stuff as our home page so we can round up this section. I'm going to come right here. Let me bring this down. First of all, I'm going to have my template right here. because on a normal day, these data right here, such as the categories, the feature product, are supposed to be coming from our backend API. But because our focus for this course is just to teach how Angular works, we are going to be having this data in a dummy form within our component right here. So I'm going to do that. So within this component right here, before then, I'm going to bring in the common module because I'm going to be using Angular directive in my template. So I have your common module right here. So I can use my for loop, my if, else statements, switch, etc. So right here, I need to have my feature products right there. So I'm just going to say feature products data. This is going to bring these products right here. The data for this product is what I want to have up. So I'm going to call it feature products. It's just going to be an array of products like this. And right here, I'm going to have some dummy data. I'm just going to have everything up right there. So we'll be a little bit fast. So, okay. So I just quickly did that and let me, okay, that's too small. So let me do like this, right? So again, we have like 6 products right here. Each of them has its own unique ID. Product 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each of them has a name, the price, the old price, so that you can see like old price and new price, that kind of stuff, just as an e-commerce platform is. We have the image, which is going to be the image that is displayed right here. And then we have the ratings, the average ratings. Then we have the badge, if it is currently selling, if it is hot, if it is trending. So on a normal e-commerce platform, this is how we'll be getting our data from our backend API. Our data will be coming in this format, and our job is to get hold of the data and display it right here in the front end, as we can see. So let me just have this dummy data here to represent our API data. Also, let's have our category data. I'm going to come right here and say category data, which I'm going to say categories like this. And then I'm just going to display all my category and the icons like so. Again, we're just simulating how our category data will be coming from our backend. So these are our categories right here. It has the name, the icon, and then the colors like so. Let me also have some testimonials, something like this that says what our customers say. Again, this is going to be coming from our back end. So let me just simulate it like that by saying testimonials. And then I'm just going to have my testimonials like that, something like this, right? Okay. Again, we have the name of the person giving the testimonial, the role, the content, which is a comment that he or she gave, the rating, and then the image of the person, something like that. Okay, so let me just bring this back to the display it was in, and I'm going to head on to have the home page implementation right here. And before I do that, I will already have the styling right here in the CSS part right here. So again, this is not a CSS course, so I already pre-wrote the style out here. Okay, so yeah, so let's head down for the template, and we are going to just come right here. Let me have a big div, and then I'm going to give it a class of landing page, and then I'm going to have the hero section here. So I'm just going to say section, and then class is going to be hero. And for also a little bit fast, I'm just going to probably just do this at the background because we're not really doing much here. We're just displaying a dummy data right here. Okay, so this is our hero right here. If I pull this up and check our running app, you can see this is it, right? Kind of look a little bit cool. This is our hero section. Let's proceed to have our category section. I'm going to come right here and say category section like that. So here I'm going to say section, and this is going to have a class right here. So I'm going to call categories. I already have that style up. And then I'm going to have a div right here and give it a class of container, like so. And then I'm going to have another div, and then, just have some, dummy data right there. So let me just do that quietly, like that. Okay, so if I come right here, this is what you have our category right here, browse our collection. Now let's head on to display the actual category, which is going to be coming from our template right here, our component right here, which is this category right here. So let's display this by using our directive, which is the for loop. So I'm going to come right here, and here I'm going to create a div and then have another div right here. So within this div, I'm going to give it a class name called category grid. That was the styling I gave to it. So category grid, and this other one right here, I'm going to first of all give it a class called category card. Category card, it should be small letter C, like that. And I'm going to use this to say, you know what, let's just do that. I'm going to select a background color for this by getting the background color from the category. So before I do that, let me first of all use the for loop to loop over the categories and display the data. So I'm going to be using the classical directive by using this ng for. You can decide to do this, or you can decide to say at for, and you write your condition, let's say for, let's say categories, you remember the new syntax. You can decide to do that for me. Let me just use this old one, right? I'm just going to ng for, then the syntax is let cat. You can call it cat or category. You just call it category, then of the categories, which is these categories right here. So it's going to pick these categories, loop over them, and get each of these items as a category, which is what we are doing right here. Okay, now I'm going to say div right here, and then I'm going to display each of them by having the category icon, the category name, and then the shop night kind of stuff. So I'm just going to come right here and say, let me just make this one line. And this is going to be category, which is each of the item right now, dot the icon. That's going to help display the icon. Remember, the category array has an icon, it has a color, and it has the name. Okay, so this is going to display the icon. Then let's use the h3 to display the name by saying category dot name, and then let me display the shop now by using a spam to just say, okay, let's just say shop now. This is just going to be like a button kind of stuff, and then you can probably just, let's just leave it that way. And I'm going to have each different class right here. For this, it has a styling which I called category dash icon. For this other one, I had a styling called category dash name, and this other one I have a styling called category count. So let me see what is being displayed right here. You can see this is the category, but right now the problem is that all of them has one particular color, which is blue, compared to this other design where they have different colors. So for us to be able to make each of these category color to be the color that came with it. Remember, each of them has a color. I need to do one thing here by coming right here and saying the style which you are going to give to each of the element by saying style dot background. This should be gotten from the category dot color. So what I'm saying is that I'm setting the background color to the color of this setup right here. So now if I come right here, you can see the background color has changed. So again, this is also another way for, for using binding. Okay, so you can use this to get, to change the style conditionally, which is exactly what we are doing like this. Okay, so that is it, and I'm just going to then head on. I don't know, I think my time is a little bit up. I'm just going to quickly head on to display all the products, which is we're going to be doing this next. I'm just going to also loop to display all the products and also to have this little stuff right here. Okay, this will be done in the next lecture. So we'll head on to have this feature product right here so we can display our products. So I'm going to head on to my code and move it down after the section. Let me move this up a bit. I'm just going to have my comment and say products like this, and this is going to be a section, and it's going to have a styling which I'm going to call, which I call featured. And then it's going to have another div like that, and then I'm going to have a styling called container, and then it's going to have another div again, and then I can have, I don't know, I can have a styling right here called section header, something like this here, I think. Okay, so right here I can have my stuff. Let me just quickly have them up right here just to be fast, which is, have this bestseller stuff, which is just this kind of stuff right here. Bestseller, feature product, and this. Okay, that's the first thing we have to do. Then after that, I need to create another div right here. I'm just going to say div, and let me move this down a bit. And it's going to have some styling called product read like that. And then I'm going to have my div right here, which I'm going to use my ng for to loop over it. So that's going to be directive ng4 equal to, we know what we want to do. We want to say let each of them should be called product of, what did I call it right here, of featured product. So we're basically looping over the featured products, and each of the array item is going to be captured as product. So get rid of that, and then I can move on to give this a styling called product-card. After I've done this, let me then display each of the products right here. I'm just going to just do like this to say product dot, first of all, let's display the badge. That's going to be product dot, where is it? Do I have the badge right here? We have the price. Yeah, we have the badge right here, product dot badge. Okay, so let's display the badge. And I can have an image tag, img, and then I'm going to use a sroc to get the image URL. That's going to be product dot image. I believe that was what I called it. That's going to be product dot image like that. And then the auth, right, is going to be the product dot name if the image is not there, and then the class, I'm just going to give the styling called product dash image. So if I come right here and see, we can see this is it, right? The styling for this one is not perfect, but I mean the image were displayed a little bit correctly, and like that. So we can also move on to display the product name and etc. So I mean, I believe you already know how this works, so I'm just going to quickly do this at the background so you guys can see what I came up with. Yep, so I believe by now we already understand the concept of what we're trying to do. We just want to learn how to use directive to get hold of the data and then display it in the front end. This is basically what we are doing. I'm conditionally rendering the style for that right here. You can see like this. We are displaying the badge, the image URL like this using our binding approach. Then display the name, display the rating count, ng4. We're looping over this again. And it's just so crazy, right? So that's it. That's basically what we are doing. And I'm just going to quickly head down to display to you come up with the last one, which is this summer sale banner right here. Again, these are very easy. You can easily use your AI to generate stuff like this. So I won't really waste much time on that. So let me just have the promo banner up right there. That should be after this section. Have my promo banner like that. And if I check, this is our promo banner is it's just a static stuff. We're not using any directive right there. Then finally, I'm going to get my testimonial. Okay, I'm going to be using the ng4 as well. I just want to be fast with that because we already understand the concept, right? And the code is always available, so you can go over the code, look at it, see what I'm doing right there, and then you understand. If you have any concern, you can copy that piece of code, go to an AI platform, and say explain this code to me. So I'm just going to explain the code to you. I mean, things are not getting more easier these days. Finally, let me also have the newsletter part. Before then, let me see how this is displaying. You can see what customer says. So I have our newsletter part right here. And then if I move down, you can see this is the newsletter. Subscribe, blah, 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 blah. And that's it. Okay. So this is our homepage. This is where we taught data binding. This is our directive. This is our life cycle. So with this, we are done with this section. And in the next lecture, we're just going to recap what we learned and then we'll proceed on the course. We've learned a lot thus far. We know what Angular is, what Angular is used for. We got to see some of the different versions released. We got to see the Angular documentation. We got to see how to create components. We got to see the Angular CLI, how to manage components. We saw the component lifecycle methods. We saw the different lifecycle and at what point they are called. We saw, how data binding works. We saw the new syntax for data binding. We saw the older syntax. We saw the classical syntax alternative. We saw the two-way data binding. We saw the one-way data binding. We saw, event binding, interpolation. So all of these have been taught and we now know what they are. We got to see directive, we, a lot of stuff. We got to see how to build beautiful UI design. We got to see routing, navigation, how to register your page, how to move from one page to another, conditional statement. So all of these are the core things you need to know to be able to build any Angular application. So all of these have been covered, and with this knowledge, we can proceed to build any application of our choice, and that's it. So I'm going to see you in the comment section. Before we call it a day, I just wanted to show you how to place your icon at the top, which will display in your page at the top of the browser. So if you go to some custom website, you're going to see that at the top of the browser right here where my cursor is, the logo for that website is what is showing there. But when you create an Angular project, by default, it's going to place an Angular icon right there. So this can easily be changed. Before we do that, let's get to see where this icon is coming from. I'm going to go to my project. If you go to your project, you go to your SROC and you go to the index or HTML, you're going to see something right here that says relationship icon type and then the reference where its location is the favicon.ico. Remember, all Angular pages are being rendered from this one single HTML file. Okay, so that's why wherever page you are, you're going to be seeing that little icon up right there. So it's coming from this place right here. So for us to change that, we just need to replace this to our own custom icon. Now, where is this favicon coming from? This is coming from the public. If you come right here, go to the public folder, you're going to see a favicon.ico right here. So this is the little icon that is being displayed at the top of your browser right here when you are on your page. So if you want this to be replaced by your own custom image, you can replace this to your own custom image, or just change the link in the index.html here to point to your own custom image. So let's do that, right? So the first thing for me to do is to find an image I want to use. I'm just going to come right here to my finder. I'm going to go to like pictures. I'm going to go to images right here, and I have this little, I don't know. Okay, let me go to my download. I have this like 1150.png right here. So let's try to use this. I'm just going to copy that, come to my public right here, paste it right there. You can see there's a level 1152.png. If I go to my index right here, I can just, let me just copy this right here, paste it, comment that out. And here the reference is now going to be 1152.png. And then because this is a PNG file, I'm going to change the type to be image/png. So it's no longer an icon file. Remember, the file extension is a PNG, and then the relationship will remain as an icon, and then the type is going to be the image slash the file type, which is PNG, and the reference is going to be the location of that image. So if your image is in a different place, let's say it's within the asset, you are going to just pass in your path/asset, and then just get hold of the location of that image. So now you've done this, I'm just going to stop my app right here, clear that out, and then run that again, and let's see what's going to happen. It's running now. If I refresh, you can see at the top right here, it's now pointing to my logo, and that Angular stuff is out right there. So alternatively, there's other ways to do this. Let's say I want to use a different logo. I can come right here and just say image to icon. I want to change my image to icon to like the ICO file. I'm just going to go to this website, favicon.io, click on that. And then I'm just going to drag an image here, and it's going to convert it to ICO file. So just click on like that. I'm just going to select this image right here, which is Sansa. I'm just going to open that up, click download, and that has been downloaded for me. And if I come right here in my shared in my download folder, it created a zip for me, which I'm extracted. And if I extract that, you can see there are different. There's this icon right here. There's this PNG. There are different kind of stuff right here. Okay, so you can use any of them. So I'm just going to pick this. There's even a manifest also, which you can also use. So I'm just going to pick this favicon.ico and copy that. Come right here, the public, paste it right there, right? And then let me just delete this Angular old one. Then just rename this. You can give it a different name. I don't know. You can give it a different name, or you can just, let me just duplicate. I can just call it Sansa. It does not mean Sansa.ico. It does not mean, right? So I'm going to come to my index.html right here. So I'm just going to bring that back and get rid of this one right here. You know what? Let me comment it out so you guys can see when you are, viewing the code. So now this is now my favicon like this, and then I'm going to stop and then start again by doing ng save like that. Okay, so now let me refresh again. Okay, not this one. It's here. If you can see Sansa is now showing at the top right here. I cannot see it because it's a little bit small. You can see the icon has changed to Asanta. So those are different ways to change your icon. You can use your custom logo for your application, convert it to an ICO file, or you can use the JPEG or PNG directly right there. So that's how to change the icon at the top of your browser for your website. So let me show you a different way to register your route right here. So instead of using this route, there's another way to do this. Yeah, the same thing. So I'm just going to come right here and let me just comment the home out and let's register the home. And here I'm going to say path, which is going to be the path which is home, like that. Then comma, I'm going to say load component like this, and then that's going to take in a function, and I'm going to import it directly. I say import, and then I'm going to pass in the path right here. That's going to be slash dash home, no, like dash home dot dash home folder dash the home component, like that. And after this, I'm going to say dot then, and then I'm going to say m narrow function. I'm just going to say m dot home, like that, and that's all. Okay, so you can put a comma right here. So instead of doing this like that, you can import it directly by loading the component directly from the import right here. So in case you come across an Angular code and you see something like this, it's the same thing. You can either import like this or like this. But this one is more of the current way how it's done, but it actually does the same thing. So this way to import, or this way to register a component or a page in your route, both of them are good to go. Now, before we round this session finally up, if I come right here, let me see, you can see right now the home page is still working correctly. And if I can see right here on the page, you can see at the top there's a little bit of white space right there. So let's get rid of that so the design can be cool. And at the side right here, you can see there's some white stuff at the side which does not really look cool. So let's do that. I'm going to go to the global styling script, which is the style.css within your SROC folder. So right here, I'm just going to say dot, which means I want to style everything. I'm going to give it a margin to be 0, and then a padding to be 0. So if I come back again, you can see those spaces and white spaces have been removed, and this is now looking very good. So that's a little change we need to do, and I'm going to push this to the repository. So I'm just going to pull this up right here, Control C to stop, and I'm just going to do git status. Like, going to see the change. You can see these are the files that were changed. I'm going to do git add dot, adding everything. Git status, let's get to check the files in the staging environment. Then git commit -m, I'm just going to say Angular core concept covered, and that has been added. I'm just going to do git push, and this has been pushed. Let me just do set upstream to push it to my remote branch, and this has been pushed to my GitHub remote. So if I come right here, this is the project right here, you can see. If you want to access this particular one, and you're going to come right here, just select, let me just refresh again, and come right here. You can, there's this Angular fundamental branch right there. So click on the Angular fundamental branch. You're going to see all the codes right here. So this section is where we talk about the Angular fundamental. So in the coming sections, we're going to be looking at more projects, and we're going to be building projects using Angular only. So I'm going to see you up in the coming section.